Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's at 6:01 PM. Welcome to the meeting of the Harwich Board of Appeals on this date, February 26, 2026. The purpose of this meeting is to hear and decide applications before the Board of Appeals, which have been brought pursuant to the bylaw of the town of Harwich and the Massachusetts Zoning Enabling Act. As required by law, the town may audio-video record this meeting, which we are. Any person intending to either audio or video record this open session is required to inform the chair. During the meeting, the chair will recognize promptly a member of the board, secretary, attorneys presenting the case to inform the chair if a protocol is not being followed. While in open session or public comment period, those listening to present comments or ask questions regarding the case are requested to fill out information form on the podium. I didn't check it, but I believe it's probably there. Okay. I'd like to ask members of the board and everyone helping here tonight to introduce themselves.
John August.
Kenneth Dixon.
Brian Sullivan.
Alexander Donahue.
Chris Murphy.
Okay, thank you. The received a, I'm going to, as usual, do a little opening narrative here. That unfortunately, Ken, I didn't send it to Ken ahead of time. Ken's the vice chair, and he's the person that tries to maintain my brevity. And he didn't get a chance to weigh in on this meeting, so I apologize in advance if I get a little run-on sentences. But I received a memo, email today from a lady in close to the subject property. In the main, I want to read it and then discuss my response to her. As you know, obviously, we're having this meeting, and there are a lot of people in town that still are without power, okay? And that's obviously a concern of mine, but we had to still go for this meeting. But let me just read this.
May I ask a question? John, are we supposed to call? Do we start discussing?
I'm going to discuss in case yet.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. I had someone just question about protocol. All right, that's how it. So her email said, I understand that the zoning meeting for this evening at 6 o'clock is still on. I wanted to make you aware that the neighborhood that the access road to the Marceline property that opens onto Oak Extension is still without power. Therefore, the majority of us are not able to dial into the meeting since we are without power or internet. Should consideration be or have been given to how we can express our views? Could this be rescheduled to accommodate those since there is no option to join except in person, and we have many elderly neighbors that will not be able to attend? And I took that to heart, and I was driving back from helping my son move into a home in Concord, and I pulled over on the rest stop and quickly sent her back an email. Dear, I won't give her first name, but dear resident, thank you for your inquiry. The Board of Appeals considered the inconvenience to the community. However, the availability of the board members to reschedule was the important factor as well. There was no date between tonight and the middle of April to reschedule tonight's hearing in which our full board would be available. Tonight's hearing will be continued to April 23rd. And after that, there will be at least 2 other hearing dates for the proposed development by the Harwich Affordable Trust and Penrose. Tonight's meeting will be taped. I recommend all that could not attend nor view online watch the recording. All Harwich residents' opinions and questions regarding topics discussed tonight can be expressed during the public comment period at the April 23rd hearing. Comments and questions can also be expressed remotely at this hearing as well. There will be ample opportunity for all to be heard before the Board of Appeals deliberations on this CPA. Additional clarification on that, we have 5 members of our board. We have no alternates. And it's imperative that we conduct a meeting when all 5 members can be there, because we aren't able to we don't have alternates to fill in the roles of the full members. And in this type of a case, and I think I've mentioned before, at our last 40B hearing, a member of the board can only miss one meeting, which they can make up under what's called the Mullen Rule, to review documentation and to review the recording. And then they sign a document, they've done that. If they miss a second meeting, they're no longer eligible to vote. Now, we have only 5 members. We need to have all 5 in the deliberation process. Actually, we need a supermajority of 4 to approve, or, to vote, but any approval is based upon 4. And less than that, voting, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, it's a majority vote for a comprehensive permit.
Right. It has to be majority, on that, it's a majority vote. Thank you very much, that's right. But we need to have all the members here in order to, and like to have all 5 members in order to, vote on this application. So until we have a board that has more alternates available, as a matter of fact, our March meeting has already been canceled because we're not going to have enough members, at that board meeting to vote. So again, I would hope that anyone who's interested in the future of joining the ZBA and what we do as a regulatory board, I would appreciate that opportunity that you apply. Okay? Can't take questions at this point yet, but thank you very much. All right? Is it something pertinent you need to?
No, you don't want to hear from me?
During public session, I can hear from you, but
I'm not going to stay for this nonsense, because all you're doing is making excuses for yourself, okay?
Sure, okay.
It should have been canceled and rescheduled. There's nothing to say that this can't be extended into the summer, into other.
actually, it's not. We have to complete these sessions within 6 months.
You're right, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah, well, thank you. Okay. I'd like to have the clerk now read in the case.
Case number 2026-01, Harwich Affordable Housing Trust through their agent Penrose LLC, 50 Milk Street, 16th floor, Boston, Mass. 02110, has made an application for a comprehensive permit pursuant to the Mass General Law 40B, Section 20 to 23, and 760 CMR 56-00 to construct 14 townhome-style residential structures. This hearing has been continued from January 2026.
Thank you, Al. Okay, look at the agenda here. The first part of the agenda, I guess we need to get, is the discussions by the applicant and their agent. At the last meeting, the Board of Appeals, each member asked questions regarding the application and had opinions. And that was individual members doing that. You have that printout available to you, which is a review of all those questions that the board members have. And we also have the response is by Penrose regarding those. So that's a memorandum dated February 12th, which you have available. So let's might as well kick things off here. And first question was asked the status of Bassett's Lane and the right-of-way and or ownership by the town of Harwich of the Bassett's Lane to Oak Street.
Certainly. For the record, Marion Rose here for Penrose.
Thank you.
I can speak to this. This is one of the issues where I believe I can say that Penrose is open to that concept. And what's happened so far is that the Affordable Housing Trust has asked for an opinion from Town Council on whether or not Bassett Lane is a public road. And we believe if it is a public road, it could accommodate access from this development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, for the record, Ryan Kirchhoff with Penrose, thank you for having us. Good to see you all again. We do have a presentation prepared to provide visuals for a lot of these responses, and so if your colleague is able to pull it up, that would be fantastic. I'll also note that we organized the responses to the question kind of by subject matter so that we could have relevant folks come up and speak to them rather than have 17 questions and 17 different folks coming up. So if it's all right with you,
That's fine.
We promise we'll address all of the questions that were in the memo, but might be in a slightly different order than what was in the memo. Is that okay?
Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully folks can see this deck. Okay, and folks all know that our target here today, oh, thanks, guys. Our goal here today is just to respond to the questions that were received in the comments, both in the hearing in January and received subsequently from staff and Board of Appeals. Folks are hopefully familiar with the site plan as proposed at this point, 60 units, all income and rent restricted across these townhome-style structures organized around a central green with a standalone clubhouse and with a management suite and community room inside. Okay, so pivoting, I started by gathering together the site plan comments, and it actually may be that the first one is the first one that you happened to ask about. So I believe Marion answered this to start, but just asking about the potential of using Bassett Lane in both directions, right? Providing access out to Route 124/Pleasant Lake, and then going the opposite direction to Oak Street, and understanding what our options are from that perspective. So, as was just noted, and as kind of summarized in our response, that paper road remains in the purview of the town and the Affordable Housing Trust, is not within the original scope of the Penrose project or the land that Penrose was brought in to develop. So I think folks, that was established last time. Regarding the access to Route 124, and we can ask Jeff to come and add detail to this if needed, Jeff Dirk from Vanessa and Associates, but I'll speak briefly to what we learned from him, which is that the MassDOT record layout plans for Route 124, in this section specifically adjacent to the subject property near the ramps off and on Route 6, has a no access limitation, with the exception of those two existing driveways that are there today. By virtue of the no access limitation, this project is not entitled to a driveway or access to Pleasant Lake in any way. It was noted, though, that the Affordable Housing Trust, as the landowner of this parcel, can petition MassDOT for what is called an access break that would allow a right turn only egress from the property via Bassett's Lane onto Route 124. Jeff Dirk and Vanessa noted, though, that MassDOT granting access in that way is discretionary. It's very rare and potentially costly in terms of the time and fees involved. It typically involves 1 year at least of review. It was their opinion that given the proximity of Bassett's Lane to the Route 6 off-ramps, it would be very unlikely that even that limited access petition would be considered. So I will pause there for a moment. Any further, questions?
Yeah, just one thought that I had regarding Bassett's Lane and where the Affordable Trust owns that whole acreage on top there, is that where it ends abutting 124, that actually the lane be extended further up north of the property and perhaps get out of that area where there's no curb cut.
There's already a curb cut there.
Understood. Jeff, would you be comfortable speaking to this? This was a question that we did discuss over the last several weeks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Jeffrey Dirk with Vanessa and Associates. So we did, as a part of kind of responding to the comment, we did obtain the Mass DOT record plans for, actually it's when they constructed Route 6. They established a no-access line along both sides of Route 124, starting actually at a point about 124 feet, about 200 feet north of Queen Anne Road. And from that point going northerly almost up to almost the tech school driveway, there's no access is allowed to that roadway. They established two specific points on the project side for access, and it's really just where the existing driveways are to the houses there. Outside of that, it's no access. And that continues all the way to the other side of the interchange and continues northerly beyond the ramps itself.
I see. So basically, the current no access, it goes a whole frontage of the Affordable Trust property.
Exactly, that's right.
So in order to get that, if I could ask, how did they put in the park and ride if there's no access?
They established just that opening for the park and ride. So where you see the existing driveways to the houses on our side as well as the park and ride, they actually, you'll see it's no access, then access for like 24 feet, and then no access again. So I can actually, as a part of the record, just so it's helpful, I can submit these plans. These are the Mass DOT record plans. And you'll see it, you can tie it down at Queen Anne and then go all the way northerly, so that you can see it, where all those access points
So
are.
that 24 feet where the park and ride comes in, is it also available on the other side of the road?
It's not,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. And in order to get that change, you'd have to petition them. And
the
the
trust-
chances of getting that are, it's unusual that they would do that, is what you said, right?
I'll defer to Jeff on that, yes.
So we have obtained access breaks for projects before. It's not unusual in the case if they determine the fact that they're never going to use that property, and that they can define the access, and what they don't really deem it surplus, but what they need to do is they actually do this canvassing, is what it's called. And they canvass all of the state agencies to make sure that no one has any interest in the property that this access would go to, which clearly they wouldn't. But what they also look at is, as we talked about, the location of the access in relation to some of the other driveways as well. They want to make sure that it's safe, so they have certain criteria about how far away driveways can be to other intersections. That process, as you heard, it takes about a year to go through, because it, as I said, it runs through the entire Department of Transportation, all of the various divisions, to make sure they have no objections to it. That's why it's called a canvassing, because they pass it around and everyone signs off on it. Then it comes back, and then what they actually do, if they do determine that it doesn't create a safety issue and that the state has no vested interest in relinquishing the access, they actually determine what the value, the added value to that property is, because when they establish no access, they essentially cut you off from access out to the state highway. So when they do that, similar to I think what you've been hearing about when they're doing the bridges, they establish the value for that and they pay you. So when you undo that, they then do the reverse. They determine what is the value of that access to the property, and they assess the value, and that value has to be paid to the Commonwealth in order to get the access. So it's a long process, and then they do a valuation of the value of gaining access, and they make you pay that. So it's not that it can't be done, it's just a very long process to get through, and costly.
Even though the state has, this is one of their priorities.
Yeah, I've not seen, the only time I've seen them not charge the property owner is when the property owner does significant off-site improvements that benefit the Commonwealth. So if, let's say, the signalization of the ramps off the highway, if they determine you put an access opposite the ramps, and then you're going to spend $1 million or $2 million to improve the ramps, and the Commonwealth derives a benefit, they would then see that that benefit offsets whatever the incremental value of the cost of granting the access is, and they waive that fee.
I mean, the advantage of that exit is about 40% of traffic getting off the Queen Anne intersection and off of that exit onto Queen Anne, which could be quite dangerous. So 40% relief. And if you put the second property in, that's, again, double the size of the relief. So that seems like it'd be a pretty important thing that we could have for this
Yeah,
project.
I think it's one of the things, and I know the boards had the conversation of similar type of situations before. It's not something that, obviously, we have no control over it. So it's something
Yeah.
that there can be a discussion, and I think the board's done this before where they've said, go and try to do this kind of thing. So I think it's not to say that that can't happen and that the petition can't move forward to MassDOT to do that. It's just something, we would still need to build a driveway as shown because we have no other rights of access. But that could be kind of, if that were to happen and there was the ability to construct it, it would derive a benefit, as you've described. And so even if we had the access out in the Queen Anne, constructed the project, did whatever improvements were necessary to establish the Queen Anne driveway, and then that access opened, even if the driveway to Queen Anne was still there, to your point, it serves a benefit to people. They wouldn't go through Queen Anne, the Pleasant Lake signal, they'd use that.
Right.
So I think from the standpoint of the project, we need to design and make sure that you're comfortable with the Queen Anne Road access to the property, and then that could be something that's pursued.
And if I might, that really leads into number two. Maybe this goes to the attorney, because the plans for the rest of the acreage is up there. It's one thing to consider our Queen Anne Road for this 4.9 acres. It's another thing, and I don't think this board can bypass looking at the fact that there's another 6, 9 acres above there. And is all that traffic gonna run through Queen Anne? Because I think there's a lot of people who have already weighed in and said, that's not very doable. You need this access to 124 or another access, Bassett Lane, our attorney's here, so hopefully we can get an opinion on that Bassett Lane. But even the chief of police has weighed in and said Bassett Lane and Oak Street turning left has got sightline problems. We have an issue.
Right, but the same was not said about the Queen Anne Road access, and I think that's the conversation. But it's, you're 100% right in planning for the future, and so I think that as you're kind of thinking about that, it's not outside of kind of the discussions you've had previously in other projects that suggest that some other things need to be pursued, and if they come to fruition, maybe then they could be constructed. But at least from the standpoint of the project, we need to have a safe access.
Oh, thank you.
I'll turn these in as a part of the record, just so that you have that.
No, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
I'll also email that so it comes in properly to.
thank you very much, Joe. Okay.
Thank you. Jeff, don't go too far. Okay, I think Marion talked about the process for Bassett Lane in general. I don't know if anything you want to add to that, or are there further questions about the process that the trust is undertaking?
No, I mean,
Okay.
basically, from my own point of view, I think the Bassett Lane's going to be probably more important to what the Affordable Trust does with the rest of the acreage on top, as opposed to this initial development. Where it all came to us at, one side, we started pursuing that in case we felt that there was, and again, the board hasn't made decisions on that, but if the board didn't feel the fact that egress onto Queen Anne was going to be the best route, and that's when we started discussions of Bassett Lane, which I think, quite frankly, need to be addressed and taken care of before, so the Affordable Trust can start looking at what they're going to do for the rest of the time there. I mean, whether it's single-family homes, another multifamily development, everything, nothing's been decided.
Understood.
We agree.
Has council weighed in, Mr. Chairman? Do we know whether or not we own this property?
Oh, the Bassett Lane? I don't have a report yet regarding the, I know the Affordable Trust hired a separate attorney to look at Bassett Lane ownership, and I think that's still waiting a report back from that attorney.
That's my understanding. I do want to know, I think we have Larry Ballantyne on the Zoom meeting. Larry, I'm not sure if you're able to speak or willing to speak. I know he was feeling under the weather today.
I think hopefully I'm able. And
Hi, Larry. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. Yes, we've hired an attorney to look at Bassett Lane to learn better as mentioned in the report, exactly what our rights are on that. We also have started our last trust meeting. We started exploring the north part of that property. Brendan Longley came in with some suggestions. We want to throw it out there, it's on our website to have input. I think from the discussion, our initial look is to have it low density, affordable housing in this case, so we don't add extreme traffic to the additional traffic to the property. So that's just starting that discussion, but stay tuned. We look forward to everyone's suggestions on how they want the north section to look.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Okay.
All right. I'll move through to the next question, which was regarding opportunities to mitigate any safety issues that might exist if and when there are left turns being made when traffic is backed up at the Queen Anne entrance. Jeff, I'm sorry, can I invite you to come back up here and talk about some of the mitigating measures that you outlined? Thank you.
Again, for the record, Jeffrey Dirk with Vanessa Associates. I was looking for the email from the police chief as well, because I think...
I'll read that later.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is that these recommendations were consistent with, I think, what you'll see in his letter, the email, once it's read. So is looking at the access, great, thank you. Looking at the potential access points that we could do, some improvements that could be made. So I think even in talking with the highway superintendent, The idea of moving the driveways far away from Pleasant Lake Avenue is something that we've done as a part of the planning for the project. What has been recommended, I think you'll hear it in your peer review report as well as from the police chief, is that as we're looking at the access point, considering these potential improvements, which again I've discussed with the highway department, at the driveway, what we're talking about is installing what's known as the do not block pavement markings and signs, and I think that's consistent with the police chief's recommendations as well. And what that does is it makes sure that the space where the driveway is located is kept clear of vehicles. And then it does two things. It allows the vehicles to be able to get out as well as go in. The other thing that it does is as you're coming out of the site, it creates a little buffer area so that if you're trying to make the turn to head toward Oak Street, you kind of have a little refuge area so that you can make that turn and then you could see a vehicle that's coming from the signal and traveling eastbound. So it serves a lot of benefits to that. And as I said, it was nice to see it was both in the peer review report as well as in the police chief comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. One other thing I wanted to note that we included in the presentation here is we had received questions about the field of vision where the driveway itself is and wanting to make sure that there were not any blockages or encumbrances. We were asked to look at moving the property monument sign to the side further away from the intersection. So that is what we're showing in the most recent site plans. We're happy to do that.
Ryan, in
Yes, sir.
that previous slide, you showed turn lanes. Do you want to address that?
That, I believe, was the next question. I'm skipping ahead there, but yeah, Jeff, I told you to stay close, sorry.
Why don't you stay up there, Jeff? There's a seat right there.
He's nearing the end of
I'm
his
going to though.
Well said and watching you go walk back and forth.
So, and this was actually a very good question that was asked, and I would say I had a very nice conversation with the highway superintendent about this intersection. And the nice thing is I think as the chair relayed, he's intimately familiar with the intersection. As he relayed to me, this was one of the last major infrastructure improvement projects that he was helping with design on behalf of the town. So he knows this right of way at this intersection intimately. What happens in terms of
Did
the
you say
right
there's already been some design work on this?
prior to him becoming in the position that he's currently in as the superintendent of the department, he worked on the design of the improvements at this intersection because it's the town's intersection. And so as he did that, what he was relaying to me is, correctly, as the chair had pointed out, there is no right-of-way along Pleasant Lake Avenue. He said, we put in as much pavement as we possibly could there to get the turn lanes on Pleasant Lake. He agreed that on the Queen Anne Road side, and especially on the side where the property is located, there is sufficient right-of-way to implement this level of improvements. But his concern was to make sure that as we're thinking about making these improvements, there's right-of-way. But the corner radii, and this shows up in the peer review report as well, there's not a lot of room to make sure that trucks can make those corners. So he said, just as we're thinking about it, even conceptually, of doing a widening on Queen Anne to make sure that there's enough room for trucks to make the turns to go to and from the interchange area. But he did agree that the Queen Anne Road sides, that's where there's right-of-way. There's not right-of-way in Pleasant Lake, because he said he built out as much as he could there.
When did you speak to Larry?
It was during the school vacation week, so prior to the blizzard. To the chair's credit, he's a wealth of information, and he knows a lot about this intersection, so it was very helpful to have the conversation with him.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll move on to parking. So we had received just a general comment from, I think a member of the general public had gotten up and asked about the proposed parking plan, the ratio of 1.25 spaces per unit that we had proposed in the initial submission, which is 75 spaces for the 60 units. So I'll say a couple things about this. First, that the ratio we proposed is something we believe is sufficient for the needs of our future residents. It's based upon a whole lot of data from other projects of ours, our management company, which operates properties all across the eastern half of the country, including all over New England, Massachusetts, and then here on the Cape. So we are very attuned to the parking needs and the parking utilization at those properties. This is substantially similar to what we have at our operating properties in Eastham, Wareham, and Orleans. It is worth noting that on average, statistically, folks living in affordable housing, households in affordable housing generate fewer cars per household than those in market rate housing. So not exactly an apples to apples comparison when looking at market rate developments. I think the last thing that we want to do as developers, and typically we see communities saying the same thing, is that we don't want to overbuild parking. We don't want to create parking that is not utilized, is just empty pavement. We know it's bad for the environment. It's space that could have been better utilized as additional units or open space or playground or whatever it may be. So we always want to be very highly sensitive to not overbuilding our parking and meeting the needs of the residents that are there. We are, in general, I think, big believers in if you build it, they will come when it comes to parking. The more parking, statistically, you get more cars. We know that from a big body of evidence and studies in this country, we know that the number one statistical predictor of cars per household, when talking about the built environment, is not the density, it is not the walkability, it's not the transit access. It's the number of free parking spaces provided where folks live. So we know that there is some sensitivity to traffic counts and traffic generation from this or any project that comes up in every project. And one of the best ways to mitigate potential traffic impacts is by not overbuilding parking. So it's a push and pull, definitely. And again, the number that we proposed is something that is backed up by our experience at other properties and is one that we think is sufficient for the number of units that's proposed here. But happy to continue the conversation. I'll pause there for any questions or comments.
Just one comment, because I do have a concern over the parking numbers. And I'm thinking about visitors, deliveries, drop off, move in, move out. But your other, specifically in Orleans, I believe you have access to on-street or off-property parking that relatively nearby. In this case, if we don't put enough stalls in, and someone comes home from their second job at 6:30 at night, they're going to have to park at the Park and Ride across Highway 124, cross the road in the dark, walk through the woods to get down to the place because we didn't have enough stalls for them. I struggle with that whole concept. I mean, the number is way below the ratio, and I think the comparison you make is reasonable if you have other close-by parking, but you can't park on Queen Anne. You can't park on Pleasant Lake. Where are we going to put any overflow? And you talk about the fact that, lower income necessarily don't have lots more cars, and that I see that you want to put 20% of these spots to be EVs. Well, that's what it says, right, in your document, that's reserved for EV capabilities. I mean, as you probably are aware, the average income of somebody who buys a Tesla is $144,000. That's not going to work in affordable housing. So there's some disconnects with your parking suggestions.
Thank you for the comment. If I can respond to that, so I'll try to field them in two. I'll take the second one first, which I think was another bullet point, and maybe the next bullet point on here, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion about what this means. So the number of EV-ready spaces, which means that is conduit run underground, so that in the future there can be electric vehicle charging stations. That's actually a product of the local stretch code. So that is a code requirement that we provide the conduit that is necessary to convert these at some point in the future. There is no promise until the code changes. There is no promise that they will turn into EV parking spaces, or definitely that they will be built at initial lease up. That is not our plan. So I can say flat out with 100% certainty, there are not 20 reserved EV parking spaces at the initial construction
That's the easy one.
Of this
Address
property.
that. Address the
All
harder
right.
one.
So for the second one, and I'll let Carmen weigh in, since Orleans is in our property portfolio and I'm not as actively engaged there. That actually is at a lower parking ratio than what's proposed here. I believe it's 1.19, if memory serves, parking spaces per unit. And we reached out as part of following up from the last hearing to ask about how things are going from a parking perspective. And they said that there has never been any issue with overnight or at any other time with overflow. I'm not familiar, you may know better than me, if there is parking on West Road, which is the street. I didn't think that there was on-street parking. And I know the adjacent parking is like a shopping center, which that would be, maybe, I don't know if folks park there, I think it would be illegal if they did, but in any case, it's not been reported that there have been any overcrowding issues on the property, according to the property manager who's been there since we started.
And because we have on-site property management, I think management of the parking is something that they'll be actively doing. I think during the initial lease-up, we can also keep track of how many people have cars and making sure that we are not oversubscribing people to the amount of parking spaces that are there. We don't usually, because a lot of our properties, we don't have a parking issue, we don't usually need to assign stickers and we don't need to assign parking spaces, but if it does become kind of evident to the property manager as we're leasing up that there's going to be too many cars here, then we will institute a management system to make sure that we're not going to have an issue with parking.
So are you saying the fact that if someone would want to rent one of the apartments and they happen to have 2 cars, you'd say you can't rent here because you got 2 cars?
No, we don't anticipate that being the issue, but I think to respond to the comment before about someone coming home and us not anticipating that we're not going to have parking spaces for this person and that they would need to park across the street because there's not enough parking spaces, that's a way where we will know ahead of time, but we don't anticipate that being the issue because it hasn't happened to us on any of our Cape deals thus far. But we can take a look at the site plan and see if there's any places where we can fit in some more parking spaces.
Well, first of all, if you could provide the board the addresses of the other, particularly Cape Cod or off Cape around, in Plymouth or whatever locations, I'd appreciate it because I will probably myself go up there on a Saturday night and check things out.
Sure.
Okay, so I just see what's happening. So I want to see what's being accomplished and see where, as Ken brought up, there could be potentials of off-street parking. So I will do that, at some point here in the next month for the next meeting. In comparison, the other thing is, and again, it's absolutely out of our jurisdiction, but the trust does have more land above you. And whether at some point, given how this is going, consideration is given for another type of, like, overflow parking area for both developments, I would love to see the Affordable Trust and Penrose discuss that, how an overflow parking area can be established that will be utilized by both sites. I see no reason, there's plenty of land.
Yep.
Well, wait a minute. I think there's plenty of land. No, Larry, you want to jump in, but let me just finish.
Well, only that's a perfect comment, because that's what I said. We're trying to explore our options going forward.
Okay, so I would like to see the fact that if there's another, half acre of land, or an acre of land with pot, that can be an overflow site for both developments.
Yep.
And I think that would solve part of the problem. It certainly would ease my concerns. Now, in retrospect, again, everyone might be familiar with the fact we had another 40B this year, or this last year. Their parking ratio was just under 1.6, 1.5 and 7 or something like that. Now, I do recognize that 20% of that, approximately 20% of that development was market rate. And as to your comment, people with market rate tend to have more cars. So I can see that. But if I went by the same ratio that we approved for Pine Oaks, you'd be required to have approximately 93 or 94 parking spaces for this development. All right?
Okay.
And just throwing that out. And I'd like you, if there is a potential of working with Affordable Trust, to see if there's a creative way of developing overflow parking for the full 11-acre site. I think they'd like to see that proposal, an expansion of your site plan, and how that adjusts your rental program with them. I don't think it would be much of an impact, because not everyone's aware of the fact that the Affordable Trust is renting this site to Penrose Development Corporation, for 99 years, or whatever number of years it is, okay? So, geez, have the discussion.
Understood.
Understood.
Really solve a lot of problems,
Understood.
I think, as far as for the future. Because we don't know economically, fine, right now, people may be in affordable housing, may have less cars. Everything changes. This development's gonna be here for a bunch of years. And I think at some point, economically, things might change regarding, what the affordable level is. And at that income level, they may be able to have more cars, or be able to afford more cars. Okay,
We'll have the conversation for sure.
I'll get off a soapbox.
No problem. All right. With that, I'll move on to the next, which was about handicap parking spaces, ADA parking spaces. Where are they? Do they meet the code requirements? Are they, is there one that's van accessible? And are they located within 200 feet of all entrances to the ADA units? And so we've just highlighted here where they are as proposed. They are situated, yes, within 200 feet of all of the ADA units. Yes, there is the required van-compatible unit, and yes, this is designed to meet state code.
So is a van accessible unit in a position where it's there for all the buildings and in the appropriate distance?
I can't speak to whether there's a distance requirement for the one van accessible space specifically. I don't know if that exists, but I believe, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark or Paul, it is closest to the clubhouse building such that folks, it's the most centrally located, I suppose, so usable for both people going into the units and accessing the clubhouse building, management suite.
Is there, on the state, when they look at your site plan, is there someone in the state that will be looking at the handicap parking and improving it?
I actually don't know. Is that the,
Paul?
is that the case?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, because they have criteria for accessible units as well as accessible routes to units.
MAB.
They have criteria.
I'm just so used to, every time you go, handicap parking is like smack dead center to someone's, entrance to their retail establishment and
Yeah.
other things that, I just find the fact that 4 just seems to be short, that's all.
Yeah. I believe it's in correspondence with the number of ADA accessible units that we're required to have.
I see, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll keep moving. Okay, there was a question about school bus access and asking us to reach out to the school district to see if there was a potential to have a school bus stop within the property rather than out on Queen Anne Road or on 124. So we did speak with the transportation coordinator at the school district. They are unable to give a firm commitment, given that the units here won't be occupied until 2029, and they don't do their route planning that far in advance. But they were enthusiastic and on board with the idea of this being off-street. They thought that was an excellent idea, and that would be their intention, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Moving on. These were a couple comments specifically for the Affordable Housing Trust that I think Larry and others have probably spoken to already. What are the trust plans for both the northern parcel and Bassett Lane? With your permission, I'll move on past that one since I think we've spoken about it at length. This was a comment that I believe was actually subsequent to the hearing. We just received it in writing to ask the trust to consider a right-of-way on the property to run a potential future sewer line through the northern parcel down to Queen Anne Road. So, Larry, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I think we just acknowledge that and would consider that in the future. But Larry, do you want to speak to that since that's in your scope?
I can, only what you said. We're not sure what the schedule is, but we always need to keep that in mind.
Great, thank you.
It's on the overall master plan in about 20 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yes.
20 years happens.
indeed.
And
Right.
at that point, to now not have an ability to
Active.
run that sewer line, I think would be very unfortunate. So that's why I made that recommendation.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So at some point, like, we'd love to see a site plan that accommodates right away.
Understood. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to questions and comments about affordability in general and kind of unit mix and rents and things like that. So first comment was that the agreement between the Affordable Housing Trust and Penrose notes a 50-year requirement for affordability restrictions. Why is it not longer? So I'll refer to the written response here in saying that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, that's the state agency that allocates all of the tax credits and the soft funding sources that make affordable housing possible in the Commonwealth. They have a 50-year affordability commitment that comes with those sources. That's what goes in the restriction. And in our company's experience of many years working now in Massachusetts and 50 years working across the country, having an affordable commitment extend longer than that 50 years on paper at the start does present issues from a financing perspective that has to do with lenders and investors and their inability to get an appraisal for the property. These deed-restricted income and rent-restricted properties do not generate much cash flow on an ongoing basis. So appraising the future value of those cash flows is already a difficult task that can have pretty low appraised values. Adding a longer than 50-year affordability restriction on paper for that exercise makes it almost a negligible property value, which makes people, lenders and investors, unable to offer financing to the project, and we don't have a deal. So that's why typically there is that 50-year commitment upfront in Massachusetts. Now, in practice, the way that this ends up working is that the commitment to affordability being 50 years, we're an affordable housing developer, this is what we do, we're not interested in doing something else, but it ends up getting extended beyond 50 years as a matter of course due to the way that we fund improvements on the property on an ongoing basis. So this means that after the initial tax credits, the initial low-income housing tax credits, they're earned in the first 15 years of operations, right? That's how the program is set up. You earn them over the first 15 years. After that, just so happens, that's usually about the time when we would want to reinvest in improvements to the site, right? New roof, new windows, whatever it may be for the upkeep of the site. As I mentioned, these properties, all affordable housing in general, is not generating much cash from month to month, year to year. We are not building a reserve that is substantial enough to buy a new roof or new windows. So the way that those funds are raised is by going back out and basically applying for and getting low-income housing tax credits again. And when that, we call that re-syndicating. And when that is done, we are signing up for a new 50-year commitment at that time. So in practice, the way that it tends to work is every 15 or so years, we are signing up for a fresh 50-year commitment that extends the life of this property, and certainly through the 99-year ground lease that we have here with the Affordable Housing Trust. So maybe I'll pause there. Anything you want to add to that? No. Okay. Any
Amy,
questions?
you want to weigh in?
Sure. We would do the same thing that we did with Pine Oaks which is we would have a town regulatory agreement that would take effect once the subsidizing agency's affordable housing restriction ends. So we actually heard the exact same position.
Exact same argument.
I didn't say argument, I was saying position.
Whatever.
From Pine Oaks with regard to lenders, et cetera. We did impose this condition on them and they did not appeal it, so clearly it's acceptable.
So what's the disconnect? Pine Oaks also said, similar to what you just said, that this is not normally done, yet you and, what was our last consultant?
Judy.
Both said it's always done it on.
I do it on every single one of my 40 Bs.
So is there a disconnect there with, some people say, it doesn't happen, yes, and it's always done?
So at our law firm, at KP Law, we do it on all of our 40 Bs.
Okay.
Paul, get benefit of a consultant as well. Paul, what has your experience been?
So my experience is when the board issues its decision, it would include a condition that requires the
project to remain affordable in perpetuity. That's separate from the affordable housing restriction. I know that KP Law has a long history of, in its decisions, requiring essentially a replacement restriction if the original restriction becomes no longer valid. I have no problem with that. I think that that's a standard thing to do. But at the end of the day, the board's really main concern is to ensure that the units remain affordable. Whether there's a restriction or not, if you have the condition that says that they're to remain affordable in perpetuity, then you know that they're going to remain affordable.
Can I make one comment? I think there's the 40B units, meaning the 20% that is the minimum under 40B. For those units to be affordable in perpetuity is fine, but for the 100% of the units be affordable at these lower levels, I think that will severely depress the value of the property. But for market rate developments, you can even market rate developments, you can do the kind of minimum 40B requirements in perpetuity, and same for us. But it's the deeper restrictions that will make it difficult for lenders to get an appraisal that will appraise out.
Apparently, a lot of 40B developments out there that are successfully keeping themselves, in the proper cash flow to make things happen. Of course, if it does revert back to market rates, which you want to consider after 50 years, you don't have enough parking.
Oh, come on. Move on.
No.
All right.
The argument that 1.25 parking is fine for affordable, but you want to also argue the fact you want to be counting.
They can afford to put a garage in.
So
So it's not about the,
I just
Yeah.
want to toss that out.
That's a little levity. What else can we do?
so I guess I want to clarify what I said earlier. It's like doing the 20% minimum at 80% in perpetuity would be fine with us.
That would be
It's the 30%, the 50,
I realize that, but you folks came forward with Affordable Trust, and their request was to have it remain affordable, and our board is probably, more than likely, going to be passing a condition that it remain in perpetuity, so
So, Mr.
we need to
Chair,
address that.
just to clarify, there's two sort of issues here. One is whether the units have to remain affordable in perpetuity. That's 100% within this board's discretion.
Correct.
To impose that as a condition. And if you just didn't address it at all, they would automatically be affordable in perpetuity anyhow, pursuant to the SJC's Ardmore case.
Okay.
The second question has to do with which units would still have to have an affordability restriction. And I think what the applicant is saying is their current proposal is for 100% of the units to have some sort of restriction. Some of them with a deep affordability requirement, some of them with sort of a standard affordability, and then there's also, I think, 17% at between 80 and 100% area median
Yes.
income. What they're saying is that to the extent you get past that original affordability restriction, that they want the ability to essentially go to the standard of 25% at 80% area median income, or 20% at 50% area median income, and not have to do the
I
deep
see.
affordability.
Good, excellent point.
Yeah.
And how does this board protect the breakdown of the percentages that's been offered in the original proposal?
Well, I think Attorney Questle can address that in her springing affordability restriction.
Okay.
But, I mean, I think it's pretty easily addressed.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on.
Thank you. Okay, the next comment or question was, what are the proposed rents and how is the proposed mix of income levels reached? So rather than just flash up all of the rents at once, I was just going to walk through how affordable rents are set, how we end up with the rent schedule that we do. I'll keep it brief. This is exciting for us, but maybe not exciting for everybody. So this is the proposed unit mix. This is unchanged from what was submitted in the RFP over a year ago, with the exception of, and I noted this last time, 2 units that moved from 60% AMI down to 30% AMI. That was in response to a change in the qualified allocation plan released by the state, by EOHLC. Okay, so otherwise unchanged, 60 units in a mix of 30% AMI, 60% AMI, 80%, and 100%. So governing those, all of those income restrictions are the HUD published income limits, which come out each year, and they come out for all sorts of different statistical areas. In the case of Cape Cod, it's just at the Barnstable County level. So these are the income limits for 1, 2, 3, and 4-person households at each of those income levels for 2025. The new ones come out usually in April each year. Okay, so you can see it's a really wide range, and that's intentional. That's something we always want in the communities that we develop, and it was something the Affordable Housing Trust made a priority in their RFP, and was ultimately part of why we were selected here, was to bring this variety. Okay, so we're going to just do one example to show how the rents get set. So let's look specifically at a 60% AMI 1-bedroom unit. How do we set the rent for that? Or rather, how does HUD set the rent limit for it? So we start by looking at the income limits that we just looked at on the previous page. Does this work if I laser? Yeah. Okay, so in the 60% column, that's what we're looking at. For a 1-bedroom unit, the HUD standard is assuming 1.5 people live in that 1-bedroom unit, right? An average of 1.5 people. So to set the income limit for a 60% AMI unit and a 1.5-person household, we're simply taking the average of those two numbers, right? Average of 57,000 and 65,000 gives you 61,530. That's the 60% AMI rent limit for a 1-bedroom apartment in Barnstable County in 2025. From there, we know that for people living in affordable housing, for all people, for all of us, 30% of your pre-tax income is the maximum that you can spend without being rent burdened or housing cost burdened in the eyes of HUD, right? And that applies to anybody. So in that case, that means that the pre-tax income for this hypothetical household that can be spent on affordable housing is $18,459 over the course of the year, right? That's the limit set by HUD. To get our monthly rent, we'll divide by 12 months, $1,538. That's what we would call a gross monthly rent limit, a gross monthly rent limit by HUD rule. Why is it gross? Because we have to then subtract, in this case, an allowance for utilities. So this is a number estimated by a local agency of the utility costs that are being passed on to the tenant. In this case, it would be for heating and cooling. It's all electric in these buildings, but heating and cooling, cooking electricity, other electricity like lamps and appliances and whatnot, and water heating. The water and sewer is covered by the owner. So the utility allowance for a 1-bedroom apartment in Barnstable County is $262 a month. So we subtract that from the gross monthly rent limit, and we get $1,276 for a 60% AMI 1-bedroom apartment. And that's a net monthly rent limit. All right? So remember that number, $1,276. And there's where it translates to the initial rent table for the different units here as we proposed. The reason why we have the 30% AMI units not with a proposed rent limit is because we intend to have all of the 30% AMI units with a project-based voucher allocated, hopefully by the state, sometimes by a local housing authority. For all folks living in those units, they would pay 30% of their pre-tax income, no matter their income, whether they make $100 a year or $20,000 a year. So it's a variable rent for those folks. So yes, those are the rents. And again, they get updated every year by HUD. Sometimes they go up, down, sometimes they don't change at all. It just depends on local conditions, their survey of incomes in the local community where they set these rents. So I'll stop there. Any questions? Yes, sir.
There is. So going between 30 and 60%. So if someone's making 31% of AMI, are they fall into that 60%?
Yes, it is a up to, we always say 30% or less of area median income, 60% or less of area median income. So yes, you're right.
So somebody who's making, you go back to your chart, so 30% for a 1-bedroom, one person is 28,000, so basically it's a 30 grand. So if they're making 31,000, their rent is still going to be the 1276 net rent?
That's right, that's how the program works.
Way more than 30% of income.
So this is why the leasing process for affordable housing projects is really complicated, because in addition to someone being under the income limit that the IRS requires us, we also want to make sure we move people in who can afford the rent. So if someone's only earning $31,000, we would say to them, unless you have a mobile voucher, you cannot afford this unit, and unfortunately, this is not the right unit for you.
Understood.
You would not rent it to them,
That's right.
because it would make up almost more than 50% of their monthly income.
That's right.
So
Because
these
it would not be
rents are not
sustainable to
based on
them.
30% of actual income. They are if you're making that 30% or less, but anything above that is based on a formula.
Unless you are bringing a mobile voucher with you, yes,
Yep.
that's right.
Wow.
Okay.
Amy, Paul, is that standard? Anybody answer that? I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know whether it's standard or not. I do know that mobile vouchers definitely factor into the affordability.
Okay.
And by mobile
Somebody
voucher,
define a
it means
mobile voucher.
Section 8, I mean, what's?
Correct.
Define mobile voucher.
That's
Yeah.
exactly correct.
Someone has a Section 8 voucher that they can bring along with them. We're getting vouchers that are attached to the unit, so anyone who moves into that unit can take advantage of it, but when they leave, they don't take it with them, and that unit continues to have that subsidy for the next person that moves in.
Okay, understood.
Okay. All right, next, do rents include utilities? I think I just spoke to this. In this case, it's all electric utilities. The net rents do not include those 4 items that I discussed. They do include water, sewer. Does HUD calculate area median incomes and corresponding rents based upon pre- or post-tax income? Hopefully we just answered, it is pre-tax income. Are the 100% AMI units, the 9 that we've proposed, are they market rate units? And if they aren't, can they be, in order to provide deeper affordability on the other units? So taking this in 2 parts, are they market rate units? No. They're income and rent restricted to the 100% AMI folks. That was set, and really this entire matrix, income matrix was set in direct response to the RFP that was written by the Affordable Housing Trust several years ago. They said that they were looking specifically for all of the units be income and rent restricted. They said specifically that they wanted some 100% AMI units. That's what we proposed. To the extent that there would be any changes to that income matrix, that would really be, in my mind, at the discretion of the Housing Trust that selected us, based upon what we submitted.
Understood.
So I know there are a lot of variables that go into setting a market rate, right? If you had market rate properties, what would be the income you need to be at 30% of that income? You know what I'm saying?
I don't, I'm sorry.
So these rates are 60%, you take 30% of that, so you're not house poor.
Correct,
And
yes.
that's your rate.
Yeah,
At 100%, you say that's still not market rate.
correct.
So at what percent, 100, 110, 120, would they be able to, at 30%, get a market rate property?
So you're asking what we think market rents are,
How much you gotta make to get a market rate property in Harwich?
like,
And have a 30% limit on how much you're spending?
Yeah.
I don't-
What's the market rate for a 2-bedroom?
The thing is that there's no set
Yeah.
level for a market rate. It's literally whatever the market.
Yeah, I know,
bear.
there's other variables that go into it, but, I mean, you're able to do these calculations, so I'm
well,
just curious.
'cause-
the market rate is whatever people are renting
And
in.
what are they renting around here? For a 1-bedroom of this type quality?
I don't know off the top of my head. We, as part of due diligence in the run-up to our hopefully tax credit application, we have to commission a full market study that does look at market rents so that the state can make sure that everything looks reasonable and kind of passes some of these tests that you're thinking of. But yeah, there is no, if it's a market rate unit, there are no restrictions on income. Anybody that can
Sure, no, I
afford it.
understand all that,
Yeah.
but I'm just wondering what the numbers are.
Yeah, no, I don't know what market.
If you were to take one of these units,
Can you go back to
three-bedroom,
the
and put it on market, you're talking about 2,500,
More.
3,000, 4,000?
It'd be closer to,
hard pressed
go
to
with
find
3,000.
something.
This one?
Be closer
Yeah.
to 3,500. Okay.
I think the challenge is that there isn't a lot of multifamily rental that is not kind of in like, that's fully 100% market as comps, but we can take a look and
That's
get back to
okay.
you.
It's,
Not just a
it was just more for discussion. I just wanted to put this in perspective.
All right, just moving forward.
All right. We've covered all these. Oh, this was a question, it actually wasn't in the memo, but it came up in the last conversation. Does Penrose know where residents of its other Cape Cod developments moved from? How many came from Cape Cod town? So I was able to get the data for our property in Eastham, it leased up in 2020. Mind you, it was a COVID-era lease up, so there may be some of that seen there. But 29% of the folks that moved in that initial lease up were from the town of Eastham. The majority, 52%, were from other towns on the Cape, and just 18% came from off Cape. So that's what we saw. There was the restriction we spoke through at the last hearing. I think it was 70% at the initial time of lease up, with I believe it was 60% of it for Eastham residents, meaning Eastham residents went to the front of the queue, and then the remaining 10% out of that 70% from the towns that gave CPC funds to the Eastham project.
Is there a preference, is there a Harwich preference for this development?
So that's something that we always say we are happy to ask for, but it is at the state's sole discretion to allow it. We have succeeded at Eastham, at Orleans, and at Wareham in asking for an approximately 70% preference, only legal at the initial lease-up.
Right.
But yes, they have allowed it.
And we would work with
those.
the town to make that application
That's right.
together.
So happy to do it, cannot promise it, but we have had success with it in the past.
Right,
Is
thank
that
you.
related only to their residents, or also can you tie in that they work on the Cape?
You can live in the town, work in the town, or have children in schools in the town.
Mr. Chairman, we did that in our last one.
Yes.
Amy, did we do 70%?
We did.
Thank you.
I have it in
It
front
is.
of me. Yep, we did 70.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to civil. Can I ask Angela if you want to come sit with me? Sorry, including me. Okay, so the first question, this will be an easy one for you to start with. Where can we see the existing utility right-of-way on the site plan, and how will it be maintained? So it's just been called out here on this site plan, the 10-foot right-of-way site easement. You can see nothing is planned to be built on it. It will be perfectly accessible. No planned hardscape, landscape features over it or anything like that. So
Were you able to determine who has that easement?
I don't know. Do you know who that has it? No. Okay. All right, moving on. All right, I lumped these two stormwater questions together. So the first was, where are the stormwater catch basins to be located? Why are they concentrated on the east side of the property? And then subsequently, just explain the stormwater management in more depth. Is the entire parcel designed to at least a 50-year storm level? So I'll let you speak to this, if that's all right.
Awesome, thank you. For the record, Angela Botto, and I am with Bowler Engineering.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. We have our stormwater plan shown there. Again, in the teal color are all of our stormwater features. So to address that first question, why all of our catch basins are located towards the east of the property, our site slopes from high points on the west to those low points in the east. So we have strategically placed our catch basins at all of those low points to help capture that runoff.
Actually, I think I included I'm sorry, no, I can't find it. Well, maybe it'll show up later, but we'll see that there's the whole town slopes that direction for the most part. All right, I interrupted you. Carry
No
on.
worries. And then additionally, you will see at our access area, there are a few more catch basins in that area, and that's just based on that steeper slope as we come into the site to make sure we're catching that runoff as it's moving a bit faster.
You got it? Yeah, that's-
To then address that second question regarding some additional detail to our stormwater management system, and if that does meet that 50-year requirement. I have provided some snippets here from our drainage report. Our system does meet a 2-year, 10-year, 25, and 100-year storm, so that 100-year storm is larger than the 50-year storm, and that's both state and in the town of Harwich stormwater regulations. I did run the numbers just to make sure we also are complying there with the 50-year, and we do. So that means we're reducing the rate at which stormwater is coming in all of those storms. The 100-year storm is that 1% likelihood. And then also you'll see in table 1.2 that we're also reducing the amount of volume that's coming to those out of our outlets there. And that's all designed based on the existing conditions of the site. We've evaluated that based on 2 design points, and that is Queen Anne Road towards the bottom of our page, and then Pleasant Lake Ave, with the majority of the site going to that first design point. And with that, does anyone have any questions?
Today's my night. How about a hydrological study? Has it been done, and when will it be done?
So we ran this all through HydroCAD, and that's what we modeled in order to come up with our calculations and numbers and sizing of all the systems that are on the
And so is that
plan
the same
now.
thing as submitting a comprehensive hydrological study prior to any approval?
That is not.
It's not. Is that something we can do?
We can look into that.
Yeah, we're happy to discuss.
Okay, thank you.
The Board of Health has requested that study,
Okay.
if possible.
Understood.
They've given us that advice. Obviously, the Board of Health doesn't have authority in this. It's all the ZBA, but we're looking for comments from our departments.
Understood. Okay.
Can you go back to site plan again, and again, is my pet peeve. So, again, in the future, 20 years from now, when there is sewer on the street, where would you be running the connection, or, which would be required, from your septic system out to the street? Because it depends on where the pipe is, I realize that. but
Yeah.
Right.
More likely, it's going to be someplace on Queen Anne Road.
So we can reuse the piping that we're currently using to go into those septic systems, and that piping can be reused for a connection. It just needs a stub out to go down to the Queen Anne Road to connect for that future.
So would you be throwing that through the, besides the buildings and that type of thing, or just be area there, or?
Do you want to speak to that, Brian? Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm gonna have my colleague Brian come.
Okay, I just
This
wanted,
is a good segue, because the next item up is septic, and Brian's here.
the key
to-
thing is, do you have the room to put it in? That's all I need to know.
Understood.
Yes. For the record, Brian Grogan with Bowler Engineering. So yes, we do have the ability to put the future sewer in, so this can work now and 10, 20, 30 years in the future when that shows up.
Great.
Okay. All right, that takes us to the next, which was just to provide additional details about the proposed septic system and nitrogen release. I'll turn over to you, Brian, if you want to walk through some of the...
Sure. So we're proposing two septic systems on the property. Kind of broke the property into 2 pieces, largely to make sure that it works with the landscaping and not to have one very large system. Both of them are utilizing the advanced Septitech Star units, which provide for enhanced nitrogen removal, as well as GST leaching fields, both of which are approved by Mass DEP for use for the flow rates that they're rated for, that we're designing them for. We have done some started to do some preliminary nitrogen calculations. After speaking to the health department in conformance with the Cape Cod studies, we're working through those numbers now for the whole development. It does look like, based on a review of the groundwater management plan, groundwater flow direction is basically to the southwest of this property towards Herring River. Again, we're looking at this compared to a traditional, say, 5-unit subdivision on the property. With the enhanced nitrogen removal from these units, we are actually less nitrogen than if you were to develop this with a conventional 5-unit, 5-lot subdivision with traditional houses and traditional septic. Again, these
Repeat that,
enhanced.
please.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so if you were to develop this property with a 5-lot, single-family subdivision.
5 homes.
5 homes, 5 bedrooms apiece. We are less nitrogen with our 90-bedroom units with the enhanced treatment. It's less nitrogen per day than those 5 single-family units with
Just want to
no.
get that on record. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Again, Ken referred to it. We have a memorandum from Kerry Skroner, our health director, dated January 5th. Do you folks have that?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, just review it at some point here when we get into more discussions. I'd like to know as far as where you stand on her recommendations, and hopefully it's one to which you'll be able to comply to her recommendations. Okay.
Understood. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, very good.
All right.
Are you aware, one more question, actually, and this doesn't relate to your property directly, but I think the consultant that we're using on this would have access to that. The Pine Oaks waste treatment system that they're putting in, they mentioned a membrane that would be even enhancement over the traditional type. Are you familiar with?
I saw a version of the Pine Oaks plan, but with respect to the wastewater treatment portion, I did not see a membrane, so I'm not sure exactly what you're asking about.
It was an enhancement, and it was
It's a
beyond the
pump-
enhancement, I
Pump
believe.
barrier into the ground surrounding the treatment facility.
Okay, so I think there was some reference to like a permeable reactive barrier or PRB. I
Okay.
do not know where that was proposed. I did not see that in my own experience, that I have not seen that used for wastewater technology. There is something that is, I'll say, being explored. Granted that it's out on Long Island in New York. That there are these, they call them polishing filters. It's basically a box in a large septic tank filled with wood chips, so similar to that PRB blend, that can be used to further enhance nitrogen removal. I have personally worked on those projects with the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology based out of Stony Brook University. I have done those before, but that is different than a PRB. The PRBs are typically much larger and go by surface waters themselves.
Okay. Perhaps, future discussion at another meeting, the use of fertilizers, for maintaining your grass and flower beds or whatever. I'd like to know what your position at some point is going to be on that, regarding also sprinkler systems and trying to keep nitrogen release and phosphorus being, man-made, because we're trying to keep things green.
Understood.
I'd like to see the fact that, consideration that we reduce fertilizers. I'd like to have you discuss that another time. And as well as the use of pesticides outside, particularly on dumpsters and so forth, so that, we're using other methods to try to control, rodents and so forth without using, active traps and
Understood.
and pesticides for that.
Okay.
So I'd like to have at some point that reviewed as well,
Understood.
if possible.
Very good. Okay, that's fine. All right, moving on. Well, there's what I was trying to show you all earlier. The town-wide grading. Okay. Last couple. Where are the transformers located? This was an easy one. They're on the utility plan, and I've circled them there, where they are proposed. So that's the same utilities plan that was submitted with the application.
So all wiring is underneath the ground, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I think the question was, could they be located somewhere other than in front of the 3 buildings are in front of? One's off to the distance, but the other ones are right in front of buildings from a safety perspective. Someone drives into them.
I would guess that, I mean, defer to you. Do you want to answer it? I'll let you.
That's why the question came up last time.
Rather than me
since they
struggle.
said
Okay,
pretty close
understood.
to the parking.
Understood.
So there are requirements from the utility providers that they have proper access, and there's about 10 feet from where they pull in. So they need to be right along the drive aisles. We can certainly explore moving them a little further from the parking, but they do need to be adjacent to those
Or
drive aisles.
or some sort of a bollard structure that.
We can look at that. Sure. Okay.
We're going to rip right through this.
There was a request to please stake the proposed driveway entrance location in the field, this on Queen Anne Road. That has been done. It was actually done prior to, I think, the originally scheduled site visit, which unfortunately I don't think folks were able to make because there was a snowstorm. So in any case, they're still there. I don't know if they're buried right now.
They were wiped out by the snowfall. They're gonna have to restake again.
All right, well, has someone confirmed that they're not there? I did not drive by.
I can tell you, I drove by it to get here. They're not.
They were not there, okay.
Well,
so
they're there. They're laying down behind the snowdrifts.
Okay, so we'll have somebody go out and redo it. Consider the eventual availability of sewer on Queen Anne and confirm if pipes can connect to the proposed utility plan. I think we addressed it, this
Yep.
can, yes. All right, we've made it.
We're done.
With-
Okay.
With that, I will cede the floor. Thank you very much. Would you like me to stay here, or?
Well, I don't want you to go home. I didn't-
Not yet.
All right, noted.
Take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a quick 5-minute break, okay? Thank you. And then, next up will be, Okay, we're back. Mike, would you like to? Is there a, you have a microphone there, good. Okay.
Right here.
Folks, moving forward again, this is Mike Santos from VHB. VHB is the peer consultant, peer review consultant, hired by the town to review the plans regarding traffic safety. Mike?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name's Michael Santos. I'm with Vanasshang and Bruceland. I'm here tonight on behalf of the town to discuss the traffic and transportation peer review of the traffic study submitted by Vanasshang Associates from last December, and also the transportation elements of the site plans submitted by Bowler last November.
And one thing, just to remind everybody, there's a copy of his report that you have available. Okay, thank you.
So we did submit our comments in a letter just yesterday. We just started the peer review last week, so it was kind of a tight schedule. I just kind of wanted to describe the structure of the document. So this document is not, it doesn't provide additional analysis. It reviews the information that was submitted. So the peer review document is around 11 pages. It's structured. It summarizes each part of the traffic study that was submitted, and then it provides our commentary, whether, we'll note whether we agree, not if we agree, if it's consistent with traffic engineering standards, or if there's any additional information or technical analyses that we might need to provide a proper review. I just want to point out, I think a lot of our kind of the theme of the comments that we included in our study were discussed previously, so there's going to be a lot of overlap with some of the good discussion that just happened before related to parking and site access and other issues like that. So again, the purpose of the peer review process is that it provides the town with an independent evaluation of all the technical material and site plans. In this case, this is focused on the traffic study and the transportation elements of the site plans. I just want to point out VHB is also doing a peer review of the site plans from the civil engineering perspective. So there will be some, there'll be a second letter coming from VHB that covers some of the other issues related to stormwater management and site design.
Which can be addressed at our April 23rd meeting, probably.
Yep. The peer review is conducted to verify that the traffic analysis conforms to industry standards, both state and local. In this case, the traffic study, we compared it to what MassDOT and the Cape Cod Commission would require. We concurred this was the traffic study was conducted in accordance with what they would want. Cape Cod Commission is generally a little bit more stringent, requiring both average month and peak season traffic analyses, so you capture the summer conditions on the Cape. The review also determines the appropriateness of any recommended mitigation and to adequately address any potential impacts or existing issues. To ensure safety is maintained and enhanced where possible. And again, to review on-site operations such as pedestrian connectivity, parking, deliveries, trash collection, vehicular circulation, emergency vehicle access. And also to review the off-site infrastructure impacts such as traffic signal operations. I think in this case, the intersection of Queen Anne Road at Pleasant Lake Avenue is one of the areas that we focused on in our review. And other things like pedestrian connectivity and transit, bike facilities. So as I said, the traffic study was conducted in accordance with MassDOT and Cape Cod Commission standards. The methodology that they used and the study area that they selected, which includes intersections from along Pleasant Lake Avenue, from Route 6 down to Main Street, and then the intersection of Oak Street at Queen Anne Road. We're fine with that study area based on the expected trip generation that the project is expected to generate. Those intersections seemed fine with us, without adding any more. The traffic study did include traffic counts that were, the traffic counts on Pleasant Lake Avenue were taken from the North Harwich traffic study. So they're consistent with record data that has already been used. They did conduct new counts at Oak Street and Queen Anne Road in the summer of 2025 to capture the summer month conditions. Those were also discounted for the average month conditions to do that analysis. The study looked at existing safety issues, so there was a motor vehicle crash analysis that was conducted based on data provided by MassDOT. That was from, I think it was 2017 to 2021. We do have a comment on that just to update the data to include 2022 data. It did review the pedestrian bike facilities. As you know, there's no sidewalks on Queen Anne Road or Pleasant Lake Avenue in the area of the site. There are a couple of bike trails in the area that residents may choose to use. They noted there is a public transportation route. The Flex bus route runs nearby through the intersection at Oak Street. And also the safety issues. There was a road safety audit recently completed at Queen Anne Road at Pleasant Lake Avenue. And as part of that, there were some safety recommendations at that intersection, both short-term and long-term, that the traffic study mentioned, and that we'll also get into when we talk about our recommendations and what additional information that we'd like to see. And one thing that I wanted to note, the existing conditions analysis, so they did prepare a capacity analysis that looks at vehicular queuing and delays and capacity at all of the intersections. So the existing conditions analysis of Queen Anne Road and Pleasant Lake Avenue, we're interested in the westbound approach there because the site driveway is approximately 325 feet to the east of that intersection. And what we're really interested in is seeing the queuing on that westbound approach. The existing analysis did show that queues can get from 10 to 13 vehicles, which is around 250 to 325 feet under existing conditions. So that's something that, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's something that I do think that we need to look at in a little bit more detail, just because we don't want any issues with queues backing up through the driveway, people trying to turn left in or left out. So we did call out those issues that we think could be addressed by the applicant. They did provide a future conditions analysis that looks at 7 years out into the future, both with and without the project. They grew the existing traffic volumes by an annual growth rate, and then looked at, I think they added 9 additional projects that they accounted for into the traffic volume. So all of that is built into their modeling. And again, this is all consistent with what we would want to see. The one item that I did note for their future conditions, so at the intersection of Queen Anne Road at Pleasant Lake Avenue, they did incorporate traffic signal timing improvements that are proposed by the Pine Oaks Village 4 development, which does provide additional capacity on Queen Anne Road and does help. It should help reduce the queues, but that's one thing that we feel should be in place if they're basing their future conditions analysis on that being in place. We want to make sure that, for example, if the Pine Oaks Village doesn't do those improvements and this is built, we think that those, at least at a minimum, the traffic signal retiming should be in place before this project is occupied. And that's really to mitigate any of the queues on the westbound direction on Queen Anne Road. They did develop trip generation estimates for the project. So again, this is 60 multifamily residential units. Most of them are 1 bedroom. As you saw, it's a mix of 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Most of them are 1 bedrooms. They use standard data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Again, this is industry standard stuff for traffic studies, so we're okay with their trip generation estimates. And then what they did, they assigned those trip generation estimates to the intersections based on how they think traffic will distribute itself on the roadways based on what they call journey to work data, so based on where people live in Harwich and where they work. Generally, most of, I think 40% or 50% of the traffic was assigned to Route 6. The other 50% or so is distributed to the north on Pleasant Lake, to the east, to the west, and to the south. But most of the traffic is really going to be traveling through that signalized intersection and traveling up to the Route 6 ramp. So again, we think that that intersection is a very important focus point for this project, and they're going to need that intersection to operate to have good access to their site as well. So I think it's in the applicant's best interest to make sure that there's enough capacity at that location for the project to work. They provided a site distance evaluation at the site driveway. So really, what that is it's based on stopping site distance and intersection site distance. So this is the distance that you need to safely see something in the roadway as you're driving along, see something in the roadway, apply your brakes, and then come to a stop. That's the bare minimum site distance that you need at the intersection. We did ask them to provide additional information on that, just with some diagrams demonstrating that the site distance is met. And we were out there; it's pretty flat and straight, so I don't think there are any major concerns. But there is some vegetation on the north side of Queen Anne Road, so we want to make sure that if there's any vegetation along the frontage, that it gets cut back or it's maintained, that any signage doesn't prohibit the sight lines. And then also the traffic study does provide various recommendations and outlines their specific commitments, which mostly in the form of financial contributions to implement some of their recommendations. So I'll get into that. I just want to go through what they've recommended, and then some additional information that we feel that they should provide, just to provide a complete review for both for the board, so you have all of the information, and so we have all of the information as well, and then we can review it and provide you with a professional opinion on the project. So they did note that the traffic study noted that they are going to commit $5,000 for safety improvements that were listed in the road safety audit. So really, that could be replacing signs, replacing pavement markings. It's not a lot of money to do a lot of work. So it's really up to I would work with the town to figure out what the highest priorities are and see what they can actually do with that money. The road safety audit does list, there's a fairly large list of recommendations that are kind of short-term low cost to longer-term higher cost improvements that can be implemented. So they're dedicating $5,000 for that. They also noted that they are providing an additional $5,000 for a fair share cost contribution to longer-term improvements at the intersection of Queen Anne Road and Pleasant Lake Avenue. The applicant did show that concept plan that I believe was from the Pine Oaks Village study, showing the turn lanes on Queen Anne Road. So their commitment is to provide $5,000 to the design and construction of those improvements. And I know that you already have commitments from the Pine Oaks Village applicant for kind of similar improvements, but we just want to note that those, that level of funding is definitely not enough to actually do the design and construct the improvements. It's going to be a much costlier project than that. So, the town will need to seek additional funding sources to implement those improvements. I know that the applicant had mentioned they can work with you on securing a MassWorks grant, but nothing is guaranteed. So I think that this probably goes beyond this project, but the capital planning in the town, that might be a prioritized project. And so again, I just want to talk about the operations, the queuing on Queen Anne Road westbound at the intersection at Pleasant Lake Avenue. As I had mentioned, under the existing traffic signal timing, the queues were shown to be approximately 325 feet, which is the distance between the intersection and the proposed location of the site driveway. So one thing that we are asking for is the applicant did commit to providing an optimal traffic signal timing and phasing plan upon 60% of their occupancy. But this all, again, this all hinges on the Pine Oaks Village implementing some improvements prior to that. So what we're asking is that if Pine Oaks Village, if their project lags behind this one and they don't address these timing issues at that intersection, we're asking the applicant to actually go in and put in the appropriate traffic signal timing and phasing plan at a minimum. And they did provide an analysis. Essentially what this means is that you're either lengthening or shortening the cycle length at the intersection. In this case, it would be shortening it a little bit. Essentially, each phase will receive less red time, so queues are shorter.
How does that benefit the situation?
So what happens is the queues on the westbound approach they did demonstrate that the queues on the westbound approach can be reduced from 13, I think, to maybe around 9. I mean, it's not a huge reduction, but it's a reduction that is enough where, they may not extend to the driveway. I mean, I'm sure at some time they will, but it will help that, marginally, I would say. So I do think that, at a bare minimum, that should be in place before they have a certificate of occupancy. Whether Pine Oaks Village does it or they do it, I just think that's one improvement that should be in place. The other things that we are asking for, and again, we just reviewed the project as it's presented with the single access point on Queen Anne Road. We do think that there would be a major benefit to having a second point of access to the site, both for vehicular access in and out of the site. I know the left turns in and out can be, they might be a little bit dangerous when the queues extend beyond the driveway if that does happen. One thing that we want to prevent is a queue on Queen Anne Road westbound at Pleasant Lake Ave extending beyond the driveway, having the driveway become blocked, and then having a vehicle trying to turn left into the site. I mean, that would cause backup in both directions. So really what we're looking to do is that, after they're occupied, come back and do some sort of traffic monitoring just to look at the operations. I don't think that these are essential right when the project opens, but I do think at a certain point of occupancy, as they start generating a little bit more traffic, they should be required to go back. I think we said 60% of occupancy. Go back, do a traffic monitoring study, evaluate the queues on Queen Anne Road, work with the town on assessing if there's any issues. I think that, folks in the town, DPW or the zoning board or whoever, may be able to go out with them to give kind of anecdotal experiences at the intersection, and just identify if there are any issues that need to be addressed, that they address those issues. One of the things that was discussed before was just providing pavement markings in front of the driveway to prevent blocking, the do not block the box signs and pavement markings, just to allow vehicles to turn left in and out of the driveway so you don't have this gridlock situation, if in fact there are issues once it starts operating. The second thing, and I know that this was already discussed in detail, was looking at the right-of-way access out to Elm Street. So I know that there's
Oak Street.
Oak Street, I'm sorry, Oak Street, yeah. So looking at that as a secondary point of access to have vehicles come out to Oak Street. I do think that, if vehicles are turning left in and out of the site, that may be a better location to do it. It's away from the traffic signal. It would provide, easier left turns there if traffic congestion is an issue at the site driveway. So again, I completely agree with the discussion that you had before about looking at that as a second point of access. And again, we're just looking at this specific proposal in this development, but we do understand that there's another parcel adjacent to the north. And then I think if you get that second point of access, if there is another development proposal to develop the northern parcel, that would already be in place. I mean, you know, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think that if that parcel gets developed, you will need that point of access. And I noted, even on the site plans, you can kind of see the driveway does connect to that right-of-way. You know, it doesn't really go anywhere, but it does connect there. So that's something that I would, you know, strongly encourage. If you can get that in place for this project, that's something that would benefit. But as far as, you know, if they don't get it, I don't think that would be, you know, I don't think that would mean that the project can't operate, but I do think that it would help a lot better, and especially for the future development as well. But again, I think that's something that should be evaluated as part of this traffic post-construction traffic monitoring.
When you do those traffic studies,
What's that?
when they did this traffic study, did they review the Oak Street exit?
They did review the Oak Street intersection.
And did they think those sight lines for taking a left turn were adequate?
I don't believe there was a site distance evaluation at that intersection. That's something that we could ask them to do.
It's a terrible intersection.
Yeah, that's something that.
It's right across from the main one coming out of town.
Yeah.
And the traffic there's a mess. And if you start adding a bunch, it's already a pretty sketchy left
Yeah.
turn out of there.
So that's something, you know, that wasn't in our comment letter. That's why, you know, these discussions are at other things come up that we you know, we may have not have considered, but that's something that we can ask them to look at as the sight lines out of Oak Street, especially if there is that second point of access. So the one other thing that they did look at, and this is kind of further away from the site, was they did identify a crash issue at the intersection of Pleasant Lake Avenue at Main Street. Sure, there's, you know, if you come down Pleasant Lake Avenue, there is a pretty, you know, the queue on Pleasant Lake can actually get pretty long there. They did note that the crash rate there was higher than average rates, indicating that there might be a safety issue. I did want to point out that I believe there were improvements installed there around 2021 with the pavement markings, and I think some parking spaces were removed at that intersection. And that was the last year of crash data that they included. So they did commit to doing a follow-up crash evaluation. Again, this is post-occupancy. They would consult with the police department, look at actual motor vehicle crash records, and determine if there are any crash issues at that intersection. And I think they said they would do 1 year worth of crash data. I'd like to see at least 3 years worth of crash data there, just so you can kind of really see any trends. I think this would be beneficial just for the town to have that information, this kind of evaluation, if there's any short-term improvements, safety improvements that you can implement, or if there even is a safety issue there anymore, since the geometric improvements have been installed in 2021. We did have a comment about the parking. I know this was discussed before. The parking ratio is below zoning requirements. I think it was around 1.27 is what we calculated. I think it was 76 spaces for 60 units. So we are requesting that they provide some additional analysis on that, just to show, you know, based on industry data. And I think it would also be helpful to hear, you know, the applicant did mention they have other properties on the Cape, just kind of comparisons to what they have for parking ratios. Because again, your concerns are our concerns as well, that, you know, we don't want them to be maxed out of their parking and then have residents, you know, not have a place to park. So we did request additional information on the parking demand. We also think it's important to identify specifically on the site plans what is dedicated for, you know, if they're going to have dedicated visitor parking versus dedicated resident parking, and if that is, you know, kind of separated out, or if it's all in one. So that's another thing that we requested clarification on. And we also did not, and this will come up a little bit more in the civil peer review, but the dimensions for the lane widths through the site and the parking stalls, they're all less than what zoning requires. I believe zoning requires a 24-foot wide drive aisle through the site. They're providing 22 feet. And the parking stalls they're showing 18 feet, and I believe zoning is 20-foot long stalls. And, you know, really what we want to see, it's up to your discretion whether you want to grant them that waiver request or not, but really what we want to see is for them to show us how vehicles actually maneuver through the site and pull into a parking space, how a trash vehicle accesses the trash and recycling area, how an emergency vehicle can travel through the site. So we want them to demonstrate that those reduced dimensions work and are safe. So that's something that hopefully they can provide as a response to our comments.
If I might, before we leave parking completely, does VHB have a recommendation, a numeric I noticed you make a couple of comments on page 2. You reference the Institute of Transportation Engineering Parking Generation Manual.
Yeah.
And then on comment 31 and on comment 38, they're all being addressed. Does VHB have a recommendation for the number?
Not at this moment. I think that we'd want to see the actual traffic analysis. I know every site's different. I think it would be good to get the information, and then I think we can come up. I mean, what they have might work. I just would want them to provide a little bit more information so we can provide a better answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, it was, I think, successfully brought up at the Pine Oaks Village that going to the 22-foot was a traffic calming technique to reduce speeds. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, it could be the same way here. I think our issue is just making sure that vehicles can actually maneuver through the site, and you know, based on the curb radii that they have at the internal intersections. So we just want them to demonstrate that it can work. I think on a longer straight road, it can work in such a way that it would act as traffic calming. But you know, this site's different. The driveways are a little bit shorter. So I think having those diagrams just showing the vehicles circulate through the site would be helpful for our review. We also did request, you know, if they have coordinated with the fire department, it's always important to get the fire department's input, what their opinions are of just having a single point of access. We did note that one of the I think it was building 11 on the site plan. It's kind of in the northeast corner. If a fire vehicle does need to access that building, they're kind of trapped and they need to back up the vehicle. So we just want to make sure that they're coordinating with the fire department and addressing all of their issues, making sure that they have the access that they need to each of the residential buildings. We did ask about how school bus operations will work. I know that was a question from the board that they did address. And I guess this ties into one of our other comments. So the traffic study, recommendations, actually to go back to the lane widths, they recommended 23 feet. The site plans show 22. So again, I just think that would be helpful.
Who recommended 23, the fire department?
It was in the traffic study.
Okay.
It said 23 feet. They recommended. The site plan showed 22. But again, I think it would be good to have the actual diagrams to see what works and to determine if they need to have a wider roadway width.
Just back for one quick second.
Yep.
And then for future planning and and Jeff, all the materials reports that you want us, like to have them produced for your review. Can all these be accomplished and have it set a date that we do it for the May 9th meeting? Is there anything here that so far that Mike has been requesting that can't be addressed and be ready for May 9th? Okay, so just for you, just looking at the fact that going forward, we have other issues for the April 23rd meeting, but I think if, just want to look now, advance, everybody can get there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's May 7th.
Oh, excuse me, May 7th, I apologize, thank you.
May 9th is a Saturday. I'm not going to be here.
Well, you know, what else can we want to do on a Saturday? But
In
Thursday, thank you, Thursday, May 7th.
Nice catch, Amy.
Appreciate that, catching an open meeting violation. But anyways, for May 7th, if we could look at all the, and if you guys can actually talk together and determine what, you know, and confirm what reports VHB is recommending be, or additional assessments be done for you to evaluate and you to produce and so forth, so we can get that all accomplished for May 7th. Okay,
Yep.
all right? Thank you.
And so the traffic study also, I just want to point out, the traffic study also did recommend providing pedestrian connectivity from the site down to Queen Anne Road. I know there are no sidewalks on Queen Anne Road right now, but I do know, you know, if we refer back to the North Harwich traffic study, as part of that, there were recommendations to, you know, install pedestrian facilities on some roads. Queen Anne Road was identified as one of them. You know, I don't know if that's if it's something the town is looking at right now, but at any point in the future, even if it's 20, 30 years out, if there is a sidewalk on Queen Anne Road, that pedestrian connectivity would be good. I think there might be some grading issues, and, you know, if they do provide pedestrian connectivity, you know, I don't know where it would connect to, but could connect to maybe a school bus stop if they don't do it on site. I mean, that could be one use for it. One thing that we looked at is seeing if the transit authority can, you know, if there's any possibility or need for extending the flex bus route that goes on Oak Street, if it can extend down to the site. It's about 3/4 of a mile to the west. You know, it might be used for various things, but that was one thing that we commented on, is that the traffic study recommended it. The site plans didn't show it, so we were just wondering, you know, if there was a reason that that pedestrian connection wasn't being shown on the site plans. So again, I think the letter, I touched upon all of the comments that we have in the letter. I think in the letter there's a lot more comments. You see, it's kind of a lengthy letter. Most of the comments, not every single comment requires a response. I think most of them don't. The upfront summary of the letter kind of condenses everything down into the key issues for them to
Thank you.
address. And it sounds like they're already kind of on addressing some of it based on the board's comments as well. So that concludes the peer review. I can respond to any questions that you might have.
Yeah, all right, I'm just gonna kind of read something and ask a question. And this is basically from looking at 40B requirements or 40B legislation. Road infrastructure and related issues, especially pre-existing ones, have typically been decided by the courts and state officials to be the responsibility of the community and not the applicant. CBA decisions to deny or condition a 40B application based upon general worries about increased traffic, lack of sidewalks, pedestrian or other roadway difficulties are only considered valid if the project would cause extreme traffic and safety issues supported by expert data. Now, VHB conducted a North Harwich traffic study, which was submitted to the Board of Selectmen last January. I'm not aware that anything has happened with that study since then, and it has not been addressed by the town. All right. The issues here at that intersection of Queen Anne Road and Pleasant Street, I'm assuming, if I recall going through the study and reading the summary, that intersection was addressed in that North Harwich study, correct?
Yeah, there were some recommendations for improvements at that study.
Okay.
in that study,
And are
yeah.
you aware that anything the town has done so far to address or follow up on the recommendations that VHB has done?
I don't know of any.
All right. Now, regarding the traffic that's going to be generated by the Penrose development, or the Affordable Trust and Penrose, by this development, do you feel the fact that that traffic is going to be added to that intersection or the infrastructure of the town is going to be in any way an extreme situation?
I don't believe it would be an
Okay.
extreme situation
But
with this added
is it
traffic.
basically going to be, you know, I mean, what percentage of, like, number of peak hour trips are going to be done by people, the residents living at Penrose, versus what's happening out there right now,
Let me-
which is probably the key thing to queuing and so forth. What is Penrose adding to the queuing issue at that intersection, given what we have right now for a problem in the infrastructure?
So, I can answer that. I mean, Jeff might be able to answer this a little bit better, but I have a study pulled up right here. So they're adding approximately 20 vehicles. If we look at the westbound approach, okay,
Yes.
during the morning, that's gonna be the approach with the highest project-generated trips. I think they estimate around 20 vehicles per hour in the morning. And it's approximately the same in the eastbound direction in the evening. Under just a ballpark estimate for what is occurring right now, it's probably around 450 trips, so.
So we've got 450 trips that are currently happening now, and this development's going to add in the 20 range to
Yeah.
that. So I would not consider that really an infrastructure issue of this development on peak hour
Yeah,
traffic.
I wouldn't call that extreme, and I would say that, that level of,
5%.
yeah, that level of traffic is generally what you would see for that level of traffic would be dealt with through traffic signal retiming, to optimize the signal
So it's-
timing, making sure that it works efficient as
So
possible.
it's a minor impact, in your opinion?
Well, the impact of the signal is minor. There are issues with potential queues at the driveway, but that's more
Yes.
of a site access issue that I think can be dealt with through, other measures that we talked about. That's a site access issue, but I do think that the impacts to the signalized intersection, there are impacts, but they're minor.
The key,
Mike, you just said there was 20 westbound. I believe that the total number of peak traffic, though, was 37. There's 382 visits a day, or trips a day, but I believe it's 37 at peak. Maybe anybody over there can confirm
Yeah,
that.
I looked at that might have been total, so I
Well,
would.
this is the total development.
No, but what I'm talking about is on that approach, the other trips are dispersed to the east. So not all 37 are gonna be going through, and that's just based on, I'm just telling you what's in the traffic study. And, we looked at it and we agree with how the traffic's dispersed. So not 100% is not going through there. I think it's maybe, off the top of my head, maybe
That's fine.
60%.
But it's
yeah.
a site access and obviously a safety issue, because
Yeah.
there's still gonna be left-hand turns coming out of there. That's how
Yeah.
you get down to Oak Street, that's how you get down to the school.
Yeah, but the capacity at the intersection, I think that can be dealt with through optimizing the signal timing, but there are, site access issues that we, like I said, we really want to monitor them and have them, I would say, if they're okay with committing to a traffic monitoring study on 60% of occupancy, and then implementing any improvements that need to be done.
so when someone is coming out of the development and they take a left-hand turn and there's a queuing issue, how long would they have to wait for the queuing to flush through, so now they can have, proper sight lines? What's your interpretation of that?
You're asking how long does the westbound queue have to, how long
Yeah,
does
so
it?
someone wants to pull out of the subject property, and they want to take a left-hand turn eastbound,
Yeah.
okay? And it's queued up. Typically, with that current signals and how often things queue up, let's say it is backed up to that driveway, because of the light situation, how long would it take for really that queuing to flush out of the system? 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 5 minutes? Any idea, either one of you guys?
Yeah, that might be better for.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, Jeffrey Dirk with Vanessa and Associates, it's going to clear on one signal cycle. The queue isn't stagnant. When the light's red, as your consultant had said, it'll back up to the 11 to 13 vehicles. The light turns green, the queue goes out, the queue builds back. So if it's a 90-second cycle of the signal, most of the time is on Pleasant Lake, it's probably, they would wait 45 seconds or 50 seconds, then the signal would change green, that queue would clear, then it would build back.
So I had a member of the community, or actually, one of the departments that understands this, comment to me the fact that he felt that the queuing would take moments. And if someone takes a left-hand turn, you can't fix stupid, and just wait until you can take a safe left-hand turn. but didn't want to interrupt
Yeah,
that.
so I think when you exiting a driveway like that, so if you think about the, east-west goes, obviously you're not gonna make a left-hand turn when there's traffic going east or west on Queen Anne Road, but at some point that stops, the queue will build, but Pleasant Lake Ave will go. There will be, the signal will kind of allow for the gaps in traffic for people to exit. And the volume of traffic that's coming out of a 60-unit residential development, you're not gonna see like major queues going back into the site. You might see one or two vehicles at most.
Just a real quick thing, and before, proceed further, I'd just like to clarify something that, as members of the board, it's our responsibility to ask questions throughout this hearing. And please understand that any questions posed by board members should not be interpreted as indicating support of or in opposition of the proposal. Our questions are intended solely to gather information, clarify points, and ensure we fully understand all aspects of the CPA application.
A question just to either of you, obviously one of the unique aspects is the proximity to the high school, of this property. Is there like a triple peak besides the morning and the evening peaks that occur at this intersection?
School bus.
Well, not only the buses, but all the kids that are juniors and seniors that can drive.
Yep.
So I get asked this question quite a bit. So the two peak periods are the commuter peaks. That's when you're going to see the highest traffic volumes. And I think in any town, especially around schools, you do see sort of I would call it like a secondary peak, and those generally don't even last the whole hour. Like when school lets out, it might surge for about 15, 20 minutes. But in general, averaged out over the whole course of the hour, you're not gonna see the same traffic volumes that you would during the commuter peak periods. And then for residential projects, when those are generally peaking at the same time as the commuter peak periods when people are coming and going to work. So really, the traffic analysis, again, this ties into the standards set forth by MassDOT and Cape Cod Commission. They kind of define what time periods you look at. So, you want to match the commuter peaks with the development peaks, and in this case, they would be the same. But there is kind of a secondary peak in some cases, especially around schools. But if you think about the traffic activity to and from a residential development isn't going to be.
So the expectation is that time of day, people probably aren't going to be coming in and out of the.
They're not going. I mean, there will be some activity, but the people leaving to go to work in the morning and coming back will be outside of when the school operations. Well, in the morning, I mean, it might overlap depending on when schools are operating, and in that case, the school operations are already accounted for in the morning.
Yeah, I'm not a traffic expert. My expectation in the morning is that traffic to the schools going in the opposite direction, and probably most of the people leaving the development.
Probably a good time, and while you're here, and everyone's, tonight on the agenda, we had the Kevin Considine, the chief of Harwich Police Department scheduled, and as well as David LeBlanc, chief of the Harwich Fire Department scheduled. Because of snow emergency and so forth, these guys are flat out, okay? They couldn't attend tonight's meeting, all right? But I have a comment on the traffic situation. And by the way, the documents are here tonight, as well as everything that I'm saying is available on the website. And if there's any questions how to get to it, but when you go to the Board of Appeals website, there's a note there to, you can actually click on to the CPA applications, and you'll see the one from the Affordable Trust and Penrose. And in that section will be all the documentation that's been handed out here tonight and reviewed, okay, including what I'm about to read in this memo. This came today. It may not be there till tomorrow, but, okay. So we had a brief conversation about the fact that I understood why he couldn't make it tonight, and he said, here are some of my highlights. There were made after careful review by the police department, as well as consultation with a representative on the Traffic Safety Committee and our Traffic Safety Officer, Mark Holmes. We are happy that the entrance exit has been moved further east from Queen Anne in 124. Second point, we would suggest posting signs at the entrance and exit on Queen Anne Road stating, "Do not block the intersection." We would suggest placing markings on Queen Anne Road at the entrance and exit to discourage vehicles on Queen Anne from blocking the entrance and exit. Having these markings on the roadway of Queen Anne would create a box which would hopefully prevent cars from blocking the entrance, exit, and also helping to keep cars away from the entrance and exit, thus creating a little better sight line for the cars wishing to take a left out of the neighborhood exit. At this time, we would not suggest making an exit or paper road to the exit on Route 124 or to Oak Street. At future build-out, the right exit on 124 may be practical, but we don't feel it'd be needed at this time. We also not suggest a paper road out to Oak Street at the intersection of Oak and Queen Anne Road has some line of sight issues. This would need to be addressed prior to an agreement on a paper road. And then he recommended naming it the Considine Roadway. No, I'm sorry, he didn't do that. So those are the comments from the chief. Real quick, there was comments from the fire department. Obviously, the fire department will get involved again later on the site plan to review, make sure the safety of all the vehicles accessing, emergency vehicles, the development. But the fire prevention, granting 456 Queen Anne, the two initial concerns the fire department has been addressed in the latest proposal. The first was location of the main entrance to relation to Queen Anne Road, and the second was the potential future access into the next phase. The Fire Prevention Office has reviewed the latest proposal. The items below are concerns we would like to see addressed as the project is developed. Add an additional hydrant at the beginning of the street. The closest hydrant on Queen Anne is 400 feet away. Does that come up? Is that, how do you, you'll get this letter from the, please consider that. Provide a sweep path analysis for ladder 1. And that obviously is in relationship to the internal road network.
Building 11 is where we found the problem.
Yeah, he doesn't indicate building 11, but have an applicant confirm with the building department that sprinkler and fire alarms will be required in all buildings. 7A CM, he mentions the code. Townhouses are required to be protected by automatic sprinkler systems. I don't see any of these as being major issues for the project going forward. I am available for any questions. So that's from the fire chief and the police chief, okay? Amy, whose responsibility would it be to look at the sight lines on Oak Street and to do that engineering study, surveying? The Affordable Trust is the applicant here, and they are not a separate entity of the town. Does our board have leeway on conditioning that be accomplished as a condition or done prior to our deliberations?
No, you can't require you can't require the town to create a document. We can only peer review documents. You can request that they do a traffic study on Oak.
Right, okay, but it can't require it.
And are you talking about that coming down from Bassett?
Yeah, if it did a Bassett to Oak Street, I mean, there's been
So
discussions regarding sight lines of
Right.
Port Oak Street, and just one.
They should probably figure out who owns Bassett first, is all I'm saying.
Oh, I understand,
Yeah.
okay, good
So,
point there.
Yeah, and
So,
then,
some of that cart and horse situation. I realize.
exactly, yeah.
Okay,
And see what they,
all right, thank you. Okay, questions? John?
I'll reserve mine for later meetings.
Okay,
I've had my share.
you're allowed 3, all right?
Done, thank you.
Okay, Al?
I have no more questions. I will have questions on next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, nothing right now.
okay. I guess at the moment, I need to have you stick around because Jeff is going to step up here now and probably a few points. Do you need to comment at all on this presentation?
I'll stand up. Thank you, Mike.
All right,
Mike?
thank you.
Why don't you stay right there, Mike, for the moment?
Oh,
'cause- yeah.
sure, yep.
Very brief, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the comments. We've already started responding to them. The comments, I think, as we talked about in other projects, they're meant to be create a better project, and I think to provide some additional information at the board that I think will help you in making the decision. So we've already started pulling this together. We have no objection to any of the comments that were raised, and as I said, we're already working on it. We will have it done probably within the next few weeks, which will give more than enough time, Mike, your consultant, to be able to review it, and we won't put him under the gun for the meeting on the 7th. So I think the meeting on the 7th should be very productive as it relates to our traffic analysis.
Okay, thank you. Very shortly, we're going to get into the public comment period, and I'm sure you're going to give, reasonable time to the public to ask questions and make comments, okay? One item that's not on the agenda so far, and perhaps I would like to bring it up at this point, I'd like to have a motion, the fact I want to discuss environmental site assessment. Do we have any, I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, recently, I had, and my understanding is that Penrose and your engineers have done a site assessment for environmental site assessment. Before you can jump up any time, it'll be fine. Back in 2021, when the town was buying this property, there was a Phase 1 environmental site assessment that was done. It had not at that time been registered with the town hall, and so the town clerk nor any of the departments, they didn't have that Phase 1 report that was done back in 2021, all right? It had occurred to me just a few weeks ago, the fact that this parcel, all 11 acres, was associated with basically a junk business, okay? And that although this property wasn't extensively used, it was in part used, okay? So I then started inquiring regarding environmental study of the Phase 1 been done. There was no records of it, but finally, we determined in talking to the Affordable Trust that they did have a copy of that report. Now, that report indicated the fact that at that time, there were items found on the site, more rubble than anything else, but also included tanks and so forth that were found on the site. There was not, any time in my experience, and again, I haven't been involved with site assessments for over 20 years, but I used to be involved with it quite a bit when I was in the real estate business, industrial real estate, and we often had to get Phase 1, Phase 2, as well as 21E certifications that were accomplished. So when a Phase 1 is done, they find anything, it's supposed to follow into a Phase 2. And after Phase 2 is completed, then there's it used to be, a 21E compliance report would be certified by an engineer. Okay. Now, when information came out to you folks and the applicant regarding, Affordable Trust, we identified just yesterday or whatever that an additional site assessment was done by your company. And I was wondering if you might comment on that and where we stand.
Sure, yeah, I can start. You can fill in afterward. So the Phase 1 ESA that was performed back in 2021, obviously long before we were
Sure.
involved, I believe that was part of the RFP package that was put out by the Housing Trust. So it was information that was available to all respondents at that time. As you mentioned, it's kind of the identification of potential issues, but not really a deep dive on what, obviously warrants further study. That's usually what comes out of a Phase 1 ESA, if there's an item like that. So we, as part of our standard due diligence, we would do this on any project, anywhere. After being selected by the trust, we undertook our own Phase 1 ESA, hired a consultant. Those usually for lenders, investors, for the state, for everyone, there's a freshness requirement. They usually want to see something within 6 months or 12 months. So, yeah, the Phase 1 ESA that was conducted back in October last year, really pretty consistent with what there was in 2021, identified some soil piles that need further study, some empty drums that, who knows, they're, like I said, they're empty, but we don't know what was in them previously. So nothing that we feel is super major, but does warrant Phase 2 ESA, which we absolutely would do, obviously, before advancing the plans.
I guess basically at a future meeting, and you'll have to let the board know when you might be prepared for it, and maybe the April 23rd meeting. Generally, when a site is cleaned up and there was evidence of potential contamination to the soil and the underground water, that, again, back in my past experience, borings were required to be done, soil tested, and water samples done to make sure that there weren't any problems that need to be taken care of. My approach here is strictly to protect the town's interest, because certainly in the future, if there was a problem on the site, I'd like to know that it's taken care of and that it's clean, because we certainly, in my opinion, don't want to have residents living there when there could be a potential problem. And to protect the town's interest, at some point here, and I don't know what our regulations, where our authority is, and no need to discuss it tonight, but I would feel better knowing that at some point before houses are built,
Sure.
that there's been a 21E showing that compliance at the site is safe, and that ensuring the town's, holding back any kind of liability issues for the future.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll say, sorry.
Go ahead.
Didn't mean to
That's it.
interrupt you. I'll
I'm
say
off my
that
soapbox.
everything you've described is totally consistent with how we would approach any project, for sure. We're in total agreement. I'll also add that the funding sources that we use, many of which run through Mass Housing or another state agency, they too would require all of this additional study and a plan that is very clear about what happens once we take title, or in this event, sign a ground lease and take over the site. So
Okay.
we would do any remediation, any of that kind of stuff that's necessary. That would be the first thing that would happen as soon as the construction fence goes up.
All right. Well, thank you on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Unless anybody has any other questions or comments, I'm ready to begin the public comment period. Is that fine with everybody?
Begin.
All right, so we're going to kick things off with allowing for, and the guys, we're going to extend past 9 o'clock for, if everyone's in agreement here, for a 40-minute period for, if required, for public comment. I appreciate it. Can I just kind of have a show of hands, and also,
It's like I have 6 online.
okay,
Six.
so how we're gonna work this at first here is, we'll do a few people that are here, then we'll go to online. We have 6 people online that want to speak, and we'll certainly be given that opportunity. And how many people here? Okay, 2, okay, 8, all right, okay. And before we begin, I just wanna kinda, I think we all by now know what the rules and regulations are, that public testimony is valued by this board. Therefore, I want to suggest that you tailor your testimony to include documents, facts to support your opinion. Your testimony, supported by expert data, will be very important in the board's eventual deliberations. Our goal is to ensure that this proposed development prioritizes the safety and well-being of both the future Penrose development residents and our community, while adhering to applicable zoning and 40B planning regulations. As with the initial hearing, all speakers will be allocated 3 minutes, and there will be a 30-second warning. Ken is a timekeeper, so, it's, if there is time and nobody is waiting to speak for the first time, you will be allowed to address the board twice. So after everyone has spoken, if you haven't finished your comments, and, in that period of time, And I think if everyone followed any past meetings we had with Pine Oaks, everybody got a chance to complete their comments, okay? So we'll do our best to make sure that if your time is up, you can, if time is allowed at the end, then we'll have you come back up to complete your opinion, okay? All comments and questions should be directed to the chair. And when you ask if you make a comment, then you ask a question, you may ask your question, then you need to sit down. You know, it's just, with the chair, we're not going to get into a discussion and going back and forth on questions. If the question gets asked, then the board will address it either then, or we'll keep track of those questions, and if the applicant may need more time to address that question and answer at a later meeting, that's how it'll be addressed, as well as the board members, or as well as our representatives, the town council, as well as Paul from Mass Housing, MHP. When speaking, again, please consider comments previously made, and if possible, adjust your statement to expand upon previous opinions rather than repeat them. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, please, whenever possible, include findings of facts and data to support your testimony. So, I'd like to have actually two people come up at a time, one person at the podium, and then the next person waiting behind them. And after John, I guess you have, as everyone indicated online, who wants to speak? Do we know who those are,
Brian,
people?
Brian, I have the time that they've requested to speak, so we
Okay,
should probably take them
excellent.
in that order.
All right, that's good. So you'll be in charge of that, okay? And thank you. If you could state your name and so forth, and
Hi. Hi, I'm Carol Porter. I live on Queen Anne Road in Harwich. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
of course, Carol.
I'm hoping the information I share with you can help you better understand the neighborhood, because I've heard a lot of numbers here tonight. And we all know there's statisticians, and then there's people who know the neighborhood. So, in considering access on that old cartway that Bassett Lane, it's going to cost that significant cost. The $5,000 isn't going to build a road with utilities and everything. So it would be expensive. The Queen Anne Road access has already been approved. And that's a hazardous intersection already at Oak Street and Queen Anne. So if you're coming out of Oak Street from that extension side and you want to take a left, you just have to, inch out and then gun it, because you can't see the cars coming around. I've been beeped at, I don't know how many times, because they come fast, too. They drive too fast on Queen Anne. And the Traffic Safety Committee does support the access point on Queen Anne also. And a new traffic impact assessment would have to be done, because the current one was done without traffic coming out of Oak Street. And also, I heard in the past that there was a sidewalk considered going up to 124. I heard talk of that, but nobody walks that way. A sidewalk is needed to Oak Street, because there's the high school's there, the community building's there, the Brooks Park is there, and, these kids are gonna have working parents. They're gonna need to walk down. So, a sidewalk would have to be built too. Yeah, it would, serve the needs of the new neighborhood. I'm all for affordable housing, as long as it fits into the neighborhood. Thanks.
Excellent points. Thank you very much. And who's the next, please? And we have a third person after this gentleman speaks? Okay. Actually, after you speak, we'll call on, and who's going to be the
John
next one?
Eklund.
All right.
John Eklund will be next.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Benjamin Porter. I live on 510 Queen Anne Road, which is at the northeast corner of the intersection of Queen Anne Oak Street. So I have a pretty good perspective of that intersection. I can hear the beeps all day long. I've personally witnessed multiple accidents there, which would be on record with the police department, so they could give you information on accidents at that intersection. But beyond that, it's constant near misses, constant, just people beeping because the rate of speed on Queen Anne in the sight line, the distance that you can see coming out of that intersection is not safe. I think accessing the property through that Bassett Lane access would be incredibly dangerous. That intersection is already dangerous without the added traffic congestion. Another point I wanted to make with the traffic study, the actual peak time for traffic heading westbound on Queen Anne is in the summer on the weekends, people coming and going from their rental properties or their second homes. So that traffic will back up in front of my house consistently on the weekends in the summer. It didn't seem like that was addressed in the traffic study. I just want to put that comment out there. Maybe it was and I missed it, but there is peak traffic time in the morning and the afternoon commute, but on top of that, it's even worse in the summer on the weekends with the tourist traffic. I can sit on my front porch and just basically wave goodbye to everyone heading westbound on Saturday and Sunday at different times during the day. It takes about 4 to 6 traffic light cycles to get from my house to Route 6, or to make that right onto 124 to get on the highway during those peak times when the traffic's backed up in front of my house there.
What's your address again, sir?
510 Queen Anne Road, corner of Queen Anne and Oak Street on the northwest side corner. If anyone wants to do a traffic study and just sit on the front porch and watch the cars, that's fine. Come have a seat. It'll give you firsthand, real-time knowledge that intersection is already dangerous before adding, no matter how many units you add or however, whatever volume you add, adding any volume is going to be, I think, super dangerous. Last point I wanted to make is with sidewalks. There are no sidewalks in the area. All of the school-aged children from that whole part of town will walk down to the community center, to the fields at Brooks Park, to the high school. Adding 60 units there is going to add more.
About 30 seconds.
Okay. Adding 60 units there is going to add more pedestrian traffic, and I think that should be something that should be vetted out, as well as vehicle traffic, because there's kids that walk up in that neighborhood without sidewalks. So adding traffic will add danger for the kids. Thank you, folks.
Perfect timing.
Okay, and who's up next now?
So I think some of them left notes and some raised their hands. So
John Eklund, if he's available.
John, do you need to, you're unmuted, John. John, can you hear me? You are unmuted. Oh,
There you go.
there you go. All right, let's get back to John. Didn't seem to be working at the moment.
Sally? There's Sally Yu. Sally's no longer on.
Okay.
Paul Lombino? There's Paul.
Paul.
Yes, thank you. I'm Paul Lombino, resident of 321 Oak Street. I'm also president of the Sandy Shore Association, a nonprofit group of 23 homeowners adjacent to Aunt Edie's Pond. There are several SS members online, and I believe in person. Thank you, Chairman, for also recognizing that some SSA members were unable to participate tonight because of power outages. And a special thanks to Carol Porter for her recent postcard, letting us know what's going on. That said, it's alarming to hear a suggestion that would expose Oak Street to additional traffic. I'm not a civil planner, but I think such a proposal would be inherently unsafe for area residents. Undoubtedly, it would create a serious traffic backup, possibly requiring a four-way traffic light at the corner of Oak Street and Queen Anne Road, which I'm assuming is an unlikely scenario. So to summarize, I can't imagine a worse traffic option than opening Oak Street to additional traffic. There's got to be a better way. One question, does the zoning board have an email distribution list that SSA members can sign on to for future meetings? Thank you.
My pleasure. I'll quickly address that. I know that there is not a outgoing email list that currently is available. I will actually pose that question to the town administration as well as our secretary there to see if that can be, if that is a reasonable request we can do. The issue is that probably anything that we would do as a board would have to be a general policy approved by the select board for all regulatory, committees particularly.
Not all the information's available on the website.
Yeah, but all the information is available on the website, including all of our meeting times. It's all posted. Okay.
Thank you.
And is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak? Okay, seeing none, what is the next person?
Catherine Childs at 822.
Catherine, are you available?
See her. She's muted.
Okay, where is she?
Right here, right-hand side, second one down, second
Okay.
one in, CC.
Okay, can we unmute Catherine Childs, please?
Hello, how are you today?
Oh, good, Catherine, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was concerned about the easement that was mentioned between 446 Queen Anne Road, and I believe that was granted due to the history and the age of the ownership of the property. So if they could address that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, we'll mark that down. Anything further, Catherine?
I do think the traffic is going to be a major problem there, even getting on the highway. And again, during the summer hours, it's awful. And I really foresee it should be minimized if we do want to go through with this. Maybe in half would be the best idea. It's way too big.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you please clarify, you said an easement and you gave a location. What easement?
That's the
right.
one we spoke about,
Yeah, right there in the front on Queen Anne Road.
north of 442.
Oh, the little short thing?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I walked the property with the surveyor,
All right, thank you.
probably back in 2021, and right where the railroad tracks used to go through. And I was pretty sure he granted that to me. So they were unsure who it was, but, so I'd just like to see it, or somebody should find out about it.
Can we look into that for the next meeting? Okay, we will take care of that, Catherine, for the April 23rd meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Now we need to go to Jessica, bottom right.
Okay, Jeremy, unmute Jessica, bottom right-hand side, it'd be JG.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Jessica, we have you. And Jessica,
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Your address, please, Jessica.
314 Oak Street.
Okay.
And so we're right on the corner of Oak Street and the town road. And really, I guess what I'm hoping and suggesting, just to start, like it sounded to me like the gentleman who was reading the traffic study recommended was to only look at a second access after the development was occupied. So that is what he said, right? Like he's recommending nothing now, wait to see what happens, that kind of thing. And if that's the case, what I would propose is for, if it does need two access points, that the requirement for those should be met within the footprint of the development that was like approved, rather than shifting that burden of traffic into a rural neighborhood that wasn't designed that way at all. And I'm gonna second the fact that that intersection of Oak and Queen Anne, you literally just have to hold your breath and gun it and hope you don't get hit when you're going straight through the intersection or taking a left. It's crazy. And honestly, if you're taking a left, that is gonna back up traffic all the way down. It's really, in my opinion, that neighborhood isn't built or like designed to absorb the traffic of a outside development. So I'm not sure if I have this right, but basically the development that's getting built is too big for the traffic structure. And I don't think that the solution to that should be to drive that extra, traffic and burden through a quiet neighborhood that really didn't have anything to do with that project. And that's just me hoping that we can keep it where it's already been approved on Queen Anne. The chief of police was like, bad idea. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it, Jessica. Thank you.
On to Regina Monroe.
Unmute Regina. Okay.
And can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Regina. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak. I just want to reiterate what Jessica and Paul have said. I live at 2 Red Pine Drive, the intersection of Red Pine Drive and Oak Street Extension. And that is a dead-end street that I joke with my friends and neighbors and say, I've never seen a dead-end street with so much traffic, because people don't know it's a dead-end street. Then they have to back up, and they're going into people's driveways and such to make a U-turn to get out. I am across the street from the Burrows Lane. I know Jessica's property abuts it. And that is a walking path. There's no way that we can take that traffic on trying to get out. We've addressed this traffic issue with the town for years, asking for help, trying to take a left out of Oak Street Extension. And the answer has always been nothing we can do about it. The traffic, according to the study, is one cycle of lights. The traffic on a regular day, and I'm not talking about the summer traffic, gets back beyond Oak Street. So it's a 2 or 3 cycles of lights to get up onto the Pleasant Lake Ave lights. And if we're trying to get in and out of Oak Street, it's could be 5 or 10 minutes. And trying to take a left, you are putting your life in your hands, because it's a bend in the road. We've asked the town to put a sign up to say there's a side street, and their answer is there's nothing they can do about it. Now all of a sudden it's a concern, and now they want to put more traffic on that road. And I think whomever is doing the study needs to sit on Oak Street Extension for a couple of days. That road is very narrow. If there are cars crossing each other, one has to pull to the side for the other to pass. So it's not even wide enough. I have seen first responders, especially fire trucks, go beyond Burrows Lane on an emergency call and have to back up and use that as their point to turn around. And normally they're doing a 3-point turn on my property because, again, the street is so narrow. So I don't think the answer to this development is to push the traffic onto a side neighborhood that wasn't built for this traffic. We can't handle it as it is, and I appreciate you letting me speak tonight. Thank you.
Our pleasure, Regina. Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Steve Hall. Second one down, second one from the right.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Steve. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. Steve Hall, 43 Red Pine Drive. I don't need to reiterate what everybody else has already said about the traffic pattern on Oak Street. Very narrow. It's probably about 15 feet wide. You really can't get 2 cars to pass side by side on that street. I wondered 2 things. One, has anybody looked at Kira Lane, potentially reusing or developing that into a more fully developed roadway? It's much closer to this new development and might be a potential access point back out to Queen Anne Road. It also seems to me, and I don't know the particulars of why it's not allowed, but it seems to me that access onto Route 124 would solve this problem. And in fact, if it was routed out to the same point at which traffic is coming off Route 6, you could just have a 4-way intersection there. That seems like it would be a much more common sense way to handle a larger amount of traffic. And the last thing is, I just want to reiterate what the previous speaker said, is on a normal day, the person who in this meeting said that they didn't think that it would be a problem to get all the traffic through the traffic lights out at Queen Anne Road. On a regular day, you can't make it through that traffic light on a single green light. And so any additional traffic dumped onto Queen Anne Road, you're not going to be able to make it through that light in 1 light cycle. Maybe 2. It might take longer than that. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Steve. And Steve, what was that road you mentioned? I didn't quite catch.
Keira.
Kira
Lane,
Lane.
that's okay.
Chairman, you want to go back to comment here first?
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know the proper way to handle it, but in addition to people raising their hands, 7 people posted notes. You can see in the upper right of the screen there.
Let's check John Eklund. Maybe-
Okay.
maybe-
Okay, let's,
Go to the top.
let's go to the top, and Ken, if you might read the notes from folks, appreciate it.
Yeah. Scroll all the way up there if you would, please. All right, did Chris Green speak? Did not. So Chris Green, 6:26 PM. Sorry, I arrived a little late. Is there public access to the detailed building plans for this development? How many homes on this land and how many bedrooms per home are being considered?
The plans are all online, under the Board of Appeals website. You can access that and get all the information, every document is there, and all the reports that have been discussed tonight.
Okay, Jean Hall at 6:31 PM. What about visitor parking?
We talked about that.
We're going to get more information on the parking from the applicant and from our consultant at the May 7th meeting.
So, Mr. Chairman, at the next meeting, comments should not be activated.
Oh, they should not.
They should not. It
Not be
should be
what?
shut down.
Oh, okay, how does that, well, how do we address that, actually? Isn't the comment given,
No, there
Say in 3
there should be
minutes?
no access to allow, people should not be allowed to make comments in writing.
okay, all right, thank you.
So they can send something in to you, but not on this, because there's open meeting law.
Okay, thank you, all right,
Considerations.
So should we stop?
Yes.
all right. Well, folks, those who have comments, we would appreciate that you email them in, and all our board members will read them.
John Eklund just raised his hand.
Mr. Eklund?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, John, thank you.
John Eklund, my family lives at 317 Oak Street. We just moved up here. We sold our house in Connecticut and planning to retire on Oak Street. It's a very nice neighborhood. But now, I don't know. I have 3 adult children, and I kind of listen outside to see when they leave, whether they make it out of that intersection or not. I mean, you've already heard how dangerous it is from everyone, so I just want to put that in there. Another comment and a question about public transportation. How are we going to build a bus stop into the development? Will it go in? Will it go down Queen Anne? Is there some kind of bus stop or public transportation stop in the development? I'll go along with all the other members of Oak Street and Red Pine Circle, and think that the driveway seems a little long from Oak Street into the development. It seems proportionally long. So, yeah, I would think that's pretty much a non-starter. But those are my comments. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
John, real quick, I think the bus stop evaluation is a part of the ongoing process.
Very good. Thank you.
So that's being reviewed in cooperation with the Cape Cod Rail Trail. I'm no, sorry. what's it? Yeah. Go ahead.
I know I'm not by a microphone, but the ongoing analysis for a school bus, right, as opposed to public transportation or regional transit authority, or that. I'd love to work with someone on that.
So at this time, are you pursuing discussions with regional transport as far as gaining access and, as far as people to pick up within the development?
We're not. I'm sure we'd be open to it.
Would you consider looking at that and reporting back on our May 7th meeting? Okay, appreciate it. All right. They did indicate, obviously it's a larger development, excuse me, I mean call it a project, larger development with Pine Oaks, but they did reach out and they are coordinating things with that down the street. Okay? And particularly if Affordable Trust is going to expand more housing on the upper lot, it's something to look at in the future that I think they would work with you.
Jessica Gomez.
Jessica Gomez, could you unmute JG, please, John? Thank you.
And
Jessica?
I was just on, I'm super sorry. I heard you mention Kiera Lane, and it happened so quick. I didn't hear what came before, after, and I was just wondering if you would mind repeating what you said about Kiera Lane.
Actually, that was one of our speakers, public speakers tonight, mentioned about Carol Lane, and
As an option to Oak Street.
as an option, to use Carol Lane instead of Oak Street.
I got you, as a second access point.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much for letting me come up again.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay. Is there anybody else here that wants to speak? And I don't think we took care of, everyone spoken who's online?
Yep.
Okay. And here I thought we might not get done by 9 o'clock. All right. Okay. I believe so that's going to end our public comment period. Okay, unless there's no one else wants to speak. Did I just see Jane Burgess? Jane, did you want to speak? No.
Yes, thank you. I did post a comment in the chat, and it was a question more than a comment. I'm on Oak Street with Paul Lombino, and I just wanted to know, and this may, I'm sure, very much be in the, it's available online, but I was just wondering, if we wanted to submit questions prior to the next meeting on the 23rd of April, what is the sort of procedure for that?
Okay. Well, at the moment, and that was my next item on the agenda. Okay, and do you have anything further to say, Jane, before I, okay.
No, that was my question. I just thought, this is, of course, lots of people have questions, and we'd like to do our research as well, as
Okay.
you suggested, prior to asking any further questions. So yes, please, that's what I'd like to know.
Jane has proposed a motion, and I think I will second it, that I discuss the next meeting. So at the moment, the next meeting for May 9th, excuse me, I'm sorry. April 23rd, and it would have been May 7th, April 23rd. And I just want to get everyone to agree here between, the applicant and ourselves here, a review of the overall site plan of stormwater drainage. Do we need to discuss that further? Are we in good shape there?
What was that?
Overall site plan, well, actually, stormwater, I think, has been addressed. Do we feel we've adequately presented your case on stormwater?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. No. And drainage. On the overall site plan, that would be getting into fire safety and so forth, okay, with the fire department and the stuff that the fire marshal mentioned regarding the proper turning ratios and the provided swept path analysis, as well as perhaps this discussion about Building 11, which somebody brought up regarding, might be an issue, whatever. So the next meeting on May 9th, we're going to look at the overall site plan. May 7th, excuse me, April 23rd. Apologize. The next meeting is April 23rd, and I'll be doing a motion on that in a moment. And we're going to review the overall site plan, safety, and from the fire department's perspective, particularly. And also go back over the parking discussion for that meeting on the site. And then environmental and public health impacts. Okay? All right, is there anything further we need to discuss at the April 23rd meeting?
I do think in regards to the overall site plan, and I'm not sure, how the applicant wants to address it, but I think there was at least one, if not two, public comments asking about the utility of the community building property, given the proximity to the community center on Oak Street, and whether or not the appropriate sizing for that. Again, I don't know whether the applicant wants to address that, but there were a couple public comments on that.
Say that one more time, please?
The need and the size of the community building on site, given that the location is less than a mile from the town's community center.
Have you seen those letters?
I have not seen those
There was at
letters.
least one, I
Okay.
think there were two.
I think we
public
can
comments.
address that because it's like comparing apples to oranges in terms of their function.
think we've had
And
several
so we
public
can
comments
certainly
on
address
I'd
that.
like it to be a topic. I don't think it's not tonight.
Certainly,
I'd like it to be a
certainly.
topic.
If,
So the topic for April 23rd will be the overall site plan review and perhaps even further input from the fire department. And perhaps prior to that, if it's possible, to make sure that you have a discussion with the fire department regarding, their issues on the provide the, sweep path analysis. I'd like to have them look at it prior to the meeting.
Right.
Okay? And any other aspects of that, for their
well, we're
review.
waiting on peer review for the site plan, groundwater and such, and so if the peer review for that can be done prior to April 23rd, so we could be responsive to that at that hearing, it would be really helpful.
Wasn't the peer review supposed to be done by March 31st for those?
Yeah, it's a good point, and actually, that slipped my mind, so thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would work. And then also, the snow has prevented you all from having a site visit, when and if conditions improve. We'd be happy to show that entrance again and be ready for your visit.
You have snowshoes?
March is a challenge.
I do have snowshoes, yes.
How long before the April 23rd meeting would you want the information, the peer review on your desk?
The end of March.
Okay, all right.
We wouldn't complain if it was sooner.
Sure, I understand.
Okay.
So, for the next meeting, I made a comment, a number of other people have made comments about Oak Street.
Yep.
I think in all those comments, if you've not driven Oak Street, that extension, take a ride down there and come out onto Queen Anne.
I'd like to,
It really is true. You take your life in your hands taking that left turn. I don't even like to go down there, but sometimes you have to, so I think we need to either have a traffic study or something before that could be considered as then we pretty much have to take it off the table.
we're not in a position to order traffic studies.
Can we ask the applicant to explore sightlines?
The,
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
another question?
I can ask.
They're right here.
We would be happy to explore sightlines.
Okay, thank you. Get that,
And
just get that.
And considering the speed too, I mean, it's 35, but people go 40, but on that stretch.
40.
Yeah.
Please.
Oh, that's on a slow day. Okay. So, what we discussed so far, and also we reviewed the public environmental studies. That would be for the April 23rd. Regarding the sightlines and so forth, we started discussing about getting back to traffic at the May 7th meeting. So I just assume.
That'd be fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So May 7th, we'll look at Oak Street, look at additional requests from VHB regarding, traffic review and so forth, and parking and so forth. That'll all be addressed on May 7th, okay? Then prior to the May 7th meeting, we're gonna have to determine what topics, and I think after the April 23rd meeting, we need to look at what topics need to be reviewed after the May 7th, and what's gonna be wrapped up, and the board will meet, we'll determine another date, either in May or June, for us to meet, to have the hearing extended to, okay? For another meeting after May 7th. I see that's gonna be required. Okay? Is there anything else that we needed to review tonight?
I think you made the comment before, Brian, but can the applicant provide copies of your other developments in Wareham, or addresses?
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
My son lives in Wareham, so I'll take a trip to that one.
Okay. Probably all wonder what I'm doing up here. I am trying to find my, okay. All right. Yeah, so are there any further new business for the board tonight?
No.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to continue the hearing. And before the motion, Amy, is there anything else I need to address?
No, I'm not available on April 23rd. That's school vacation week.
Okay,
So I'll watch the.
all right, that's fine, you'll be going remote.
Florida.
So I move to continue case number 2026-01, Harwich Affordable Housing Trust through their agent, Penrose LLC, to a scheduled public hearing on April 23rd, 2026, at Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, starting not before 6 PM in the Griffin Room. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Ken.
All in
All
favor?
those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Folks, thank you very much.
Thank you.